Chapter 1536. Zhou actually didn't have many Terra-grade companion beasts. The easiest to drop was the Golden Battle God. The other Terra-grade companion beasts were relatively difficult to drop. For example, Death Number 10, Limitless Demon Dragon King, Imprisoned Dragon, and Banana Fairy. Zhou couldn't bear to use them for fusion. As for the remaining Golden Battle God, Flame Monarch, and company, their skills didn't seem to match the Fiend-armored Tiger Soul General. After some selection, he didn't choose a suitable Terra-grade companion beast to fuse with the Fiend-armored Tiger Soul General. In terms of skill compatibility, Death Number 10, Imprisoned Dragon, and the Tiger Soul General are more compatible. However, these two companion beasts have their own characteristics. It's too wasteful to use them as materials for fusion. Zhou thought for a moment and still couldn't bear to part with them. In the end, he decided to fuse with the Golden Battle God. At most, he would exchange for some skills that weren't compatible with the Tiger Soul General. This shouldn't have much of an impact, as long as he could advance the Tiger Soul General to the Terra grade. With this in mind, Zhou didn't hesitate any longer. He placed the Tiger Soul General in the fusion column and placed a Golden Battle God in as a material before clicking on fusion. With a flash of light, the Golden Battle God in the material column vanished. As for the Fiend-armored Tiger Soul General, something abnormal happened. The Tiger Soul General, who was wearing purple armor, had a purple metallic texture. The armor wrapped around the Tiger Soul General and its mount more completely, making it look like a heavy armored metal knight. These were only tiny changes. There wasn't much difference from before. The biggest change was the spear in the Tiger Soul General's hand. He originally held a spear in his hand. Although it was still a spear, the style was no longer the ancient one. It had become a very futuristic spear with an exaggerated shape. Zhou couldn't describe what the spear looked like, but it looked really beautiful. The spearhead was very three-dimensional and relatively wide. It didn't look like an ancient spear. There were some holes on it, but it was unknown what they were used for. Appearance wasn't important. Zhou only wanted to know if the Fiend-armored Tiger Soul General had advanced to the Terra grade and if its skills had been washed away. Fiend-armored Tiger Soul General, Terror, Evolvable, Life Providence, Fiendish Fiend Life Soul, Tiger Soul Runes Wheel of Destiny, Vicious and Evil Terror Form, Devil Knight S Strength, 82 Speed, 82 Constitution, 82 Essence Energy, 82 Innate Skills, Tempered Steel Furnace, Rampage, Magic Stone Curse, 1 with the Mount, Armor-Piercing Spear, Evil Deeds, Badlands, Jinx's Master, Shooting Crazily, Companion Form, None. After reading the Fiend-armored Tiger Ghost General's information, Zhou was immediately overjoyed. Indeed, he had advanced to the Terra grade. Furthermore, his skills hadn't been washed away. All he had was an additional crazy shooting skill. The Tiger Soul General used an ancient spear, not a modern firearm. This crazy shooting was probably a useless skill that was useless against the Tiger Soul General. This was already the best outcome Zhou could think of. Having one more useless skill was better than having one less. Let's see what the Fiend-armored Tiger Soul General looks like after its terror transformation. Zhou chose to enter the Yang City dungeon before summoning the Tiger Soul General and transforming it into terror form. The moment Tiger Soul General descended, Zhou felt like he wasn't playing a game, but watching a sci-fi blockbuster. The Tiger Soul General and its mount, which was completely wrapped in heavy metal armor, looked like a robot knight in a technological movie. The armor was dark purple, and the gaps shone with purple light. It was like purple light decorating the armor's lines. The Tiger Soul General's body was still burning with purple devil flames. The spear in its hand was also surging with purple flames, especially at the tip of the spear. The holes also spewed out purple light, making it look very technological. It looks good, but I wonder how strong its actual combat strength is. Let me see what you're capable of. Attack with all your might. Zhou ordered the Tiger Soul General to attack the Bloodbone Temples. The eyes of the Tiger Soul General and its mount lit up at the same time as they shimmered with purple flames. In the next second, the Tiger Soul General raised the spear in its hand. Something that left Zhou dumbfounded happened. The spear's holes spewed out continuous purple bullets of light that sprayed at the blood-bone temples like a storm. Bam! 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 This commotion was similar to the effect of a Gatling gun, but the might of the purple bullets of light was much more powerful than a Gatling gun's. After a series of explosions, many of the walls and doors of the blood-bone temples were riddled with bullet holes. Blood spirits rushed out of the blood-bone temples and pounced at the Tiger Soul General angrily. The Tiger Soul General continued shooting with its spear, blasting many of the blood spirits that charged at him. Holy sh*T. The Tiger Soul General has actually become a Mecha Knight? Zhou widened his mouth and muttered to himself in shock after a while. However, Zhou quickly realized that his thoughts were too simple and naive. When a blood spirit rushed close to the Tiger Soul General, the Tiger Soul General transformed into a spear and pierced through the blood spirit's chest, sending it flying into the sky. It sounded contradictory, but it was indeed the case. Not only could the spear be used as a real weapon, but it could also continue to be used as an ancient spear. Zhou watched the Tiger Soul General's performance from his side. The spear in his hand danced wildly from time to time and shot out angrily from time to time. He forcefully carved out a bloody path through the group of blood spirits. Unfortunately, there was no power of flames here to assist the Tiger Soul General. Otherwise, he would have been even stronger. Haha, this fusion is perfect. The Tiger Soul General can now engage in melee combat and long-range attacks. Furthermore, it can shoot over a large area. It can't be any more perfect. Zhou was excited. He watched as the Tiger Soul General became stronger and stronger. The metal armor was like a huge furnace. The flames inside burned brighter and brighter as the Tiger Soul General became stronger and stronger. No matter how many blood spirits came out, they were mercilessly killed by the Tiger Soul General. When the Tiger Soul General rushed to the Kuei cow, the Kuei cow let out a thunderous cry. The Tiger Soul General actually withstood the sound wave attack and rushed in front of the Kuei cow. It fought a crazy battle with it without being at a disadvantage. Awesome. This is only the result of constant battles. If he can fight in flames, he should be stronger. Zhou had the urge to immediately take the Tiger Soul General to a fire elemental dungeon to test it. The Tiger Soul General became stronger as it fought, but the Kuei cow didn't have such an ability. It gradually fell into a disadvantage. More than 2 hours later, the fiend-armored Tiger Soul General managed to injure the Calamity-grade Kuei cow with its Terror-grade body. It was on the verge of death before finally torturing it to death. Unfortunately, only the speed crystal dropped. Zhou fed it to his companion beast. Should I take the Tiger Soul General to the Dubhe Star Dungeon to give a try? Although Zhou felt that the Tiger Soul General probably couldn't withstand the burst of light, there was nothing to lose if it died in-game. He decided to give it a try. Chapter 1537. Zhou didn't know if the light explosion used by the Calamity creature on Dubhe was considered a high-temperature power that the Tiger Soul General could accept. Logically speaking, it was a power similar to high-temperature radiation. It should be within the range that the Tiger Soul General could absorb. If the Tiger Soul General couldn't absorb that power and convert it for its own use, it would probably die instantly if it relied on its own strength to withstand it. After all, even the Dragon in Prison armor with absolute defense couldn't last long. Although the Tiger Soul General's defense was very strong, it was still inferior to the Dragon Imprisoned absolute defense. After activating the Venus dungeon, Zhou summoned the Golden Flood Dragon scissors according to his previous routine. He used the Chaos Egg as protection and wore the Dragon Imprisoned armor inside. When the Chaos Egg exploded, he could still last a little longer. The difference this time was that Zhou had the Tiger Soul General standing beside him. The moment the door opened, the Golden Flood Dragon scissors charged at the Amethyst armored creature. As for the Amethyst armored creature, it didn't hesitate to release a light explosion that was as ubiquitous as the sun. I hope the Tiger Soul General can last a little longer. Zhou didn't expect the Tiger Soul General to last as long as it could like the Chaos Egg. It was fine as long as it wasn't insta-killed. Zhou kept sensing the Tiger Soul General to see when he would be killed by the light explosion. But to his surprise, the Tiger Soul General wasn't killed even after waiting for a while. Instead, it was Zhou himself. Without Tyrant Behemoth as a trash can to transfer the solid crystals, the time the Chaos Egg could last was greatly reduced. When the Chaos Egg was destroyed and the game screen turned black, the Tiger Soul General still wasn't dead. From the looks of it, the Tiger Soul General can absorb the light explosion of the amethyst armored creature for its own use. Otherwise, it would be impossible for it to last so long. Zhou was delighted and alarmed. For the Tiger Soul General to last for so long, it had definitely become very strong. Zhou didn't know the limit of the Tiger Soul General's strength. If it could become infinitely stronger, it would be too terrifying. It might even be able to defy the heavens and kill the dimensional creature on Dubhe. Of course, this was only Zhou's beautiful wish. In fact, every skill had its limits. It was impossible for it to become infinitely stronger. The Tiger Soul General's body couldn't withstand such terrifying power. However, Zhou didn't even have the chance to try him by his dreams. This was because he couldn't last until the Tiger Soul General became stronger. Once Zhou died, the game would end. The Tiger Soul General had no chance to become that strong. After some thought, Zhou decided to head to the future cabin to take a look. The past cabin could return to the past, and the future cabin should be able to reach the future. However, there was nothing inside the future cabin. Zhou had always been brooding over this matter. He didn't know what it meant. If it was the future of humanity, didn't that mean that humanity would perish in the future? Now that Zhou was much stronger than before, he wanted to enter again to take a look. Perhaps he could see something. When he entered the future cabin again, the scene Zhou saw was the same as before. The phone screen was pitch black as though it had been switched off. Due to his experience, Zhou directly activated the ancient Sovereign Sutra and used the power of human sovereign to illuminate his surroundings. The ancient Sovereign Sutra was already at the calamity grade, so its energy was much stronger than before. In the past, Zhou could only illuminate a small area, but now he could illuminate a distance of dozens of meters. However, the light couldn't illuminate the future cabin. What truly illuminated the darkness of the future cabin was the powerful vitality of the ancient Sovereign Sutra. The moment his surroundings were illuminated, Zhou immediately sized up his surroundings carefully. The scene he saw delighted him. This was because Zhou realized that this place didn't seem to be a completely empty world. There were still some objects beneath him, but Zhou couldn't tell what they were. Chapter 1538. As the ancient Sovereign Sutra's illumination range was limited, and the thing below was too huge, he could only see a portion of it. It was like a blind man groping an elephant. Zhou was unable to determine what it was based on what he could see. The part he could see was an uneven stone platform. It was filled with potholes as though it had been bombed by bombers. Zhou was just about to land and get closer to the stone to see what it was. Before Zhou could move, he realized that the stone platform below had moved. The stone platform was slowly flipping. Clearly, the stone platform below wasn't land, otherwise it wouldn't have flipped. As the stone flipped, Zhou gradually saw traces of artificial carvings. He realized that it seemed to be a huge statue. However, the parts that could be seen were limited, so he didn't know what the carvings were. When most of the stone flipped to the other side, Zhou was surprised to discover that it was a statue of a Buddha. This Buddha statue wasn't unfamiliar to Zhou at all. It was the largest Buddha statue in Dragon Gate Grotto. Zhou often went to Dragon Gate Grotto, so he naturally wasn't unfamiliar with this Buddha statue. However, half of the Buddha statue's body had been blasted apart. It was obvious that the Buddha statue was floating in the void. It was just floating there. How did this happen? Why did this Buddha statue become like this? Who shattered half of it? Is Dragon Gate Grotto still around? Zhou was alarmed. If this was the future of the world, didn't that mean that Luoyang was doomed? As Zhou was pondering over it, the phone screen suddenly went black. Zhou imagined that the human emperor's sutra had failed, but after checking, he realized that the blood-colored avatar had died. He didn't even know how it had died, so all he could do was smile bitterly. Past, present, future, chaos, first order of chaos. Is there a connection between them? As Zhou thought about it, his eyes suddenly lit up. Right? The first order of chaos is chaos essence energy art. Chaos's position in that mythical system is probably about the same as the egg that trapped Pangu. If I treat it as chaos, then chaos doesn't have any concept of time or space. It shouldn't have a past, present, or future. Zhou kept thinking. While Zhou was in Regretless City, Earth wasn't very peaceful. Some creatures appeared on the Rubik's Cube. These creatures looked like dinosaurs from Earth. Some looked like Tyrannosaurus Rex, Triceratops, and pterosaurs. These creatures wanted to barge into the Dubhe dimensional zone, but they were all killed by the amethyst armored creature without exception. Even though they knew that the difference in strength was huge, there were still creatures charging in from time to time. Although none of these dinosaur-like creatures had cleared the stage, their appearance and explosive power had become a hot topic. Do you think those dinosaur-like guys came from Earth? I heard that the extinction of the dinosaurs was very strange. Could it be that they chose to leave Earth and develop themselves in space? I really can't say for sure. Anyway, I find it very strange that fear was completely extinct. Not a single one survived. From the perspective of probability, it's not fair. If those dinosaurs really came from Earth, aren't they a little too strong? The body of a dinosaur is extremely tough. Whether or not dinosaur-like creatures came from Earth, the major media had expressed their opinions, and ordinary people also had their own opinions. However, no matter what kind of dinosaur they were, they eventually died in dungeons without exception. Just as the people were discussing, the Rubik's Cube screen lit up again. Another creature was challenging the Dubhe dimensional zone. When they saw the challenging creature clearly, they were surprised to realize that the creature wasn't the dinosaurs. It was a creature that looked like a human. His entire body was wrapped in armor, and it was impossible to see what he looked like inside. The black armor looked like it was made of pig iron. There was nothing special about it. Just like the Tyrannosaurus from before, the creature wrapped in armor arrived outside the Dubhe Palace. It pushed open the door and walked in. Boom! The amethyst-armored creature in the palace erupted with the purple flames that Zhou was more familiar with. Unlike the dinosaurs, the creature that came this time wasn't instantly killed. Amidst the terrifying purple explosion, it walked towards the amethyst-armored creature step by step. People quickly realized that it wasn't here to kill the amethyst-armored creature. Instead, it circled around the amethyst-armored creature and arrived at the back of the palace. There was a teleportation array there. The creature stood on the teleportation array before disappearing. The Rubik's Cube screen also turned to the rankings. A name appeared at first place. Fire Armored God. Zhang Chuanxiu softly recited the two words as he frowned, as though he was thinking about something difficult. After this battle, people realized that if they wanted to pass through the palace, they just needed to reach the teleportation array. There was no need to kill the amethyst-armored creature. Even so, no one dared to attempt it. The explosion of light produced by the amethyst-armored creature was just too powerful. It wasn't that simple to pass through it. Zhou was studying how to kill the amethyst-armored creature, so he wasn't in the mood to look at the Rubik's Cube. Therefore, he didn't know that he didn't need to kill the amethyst-armored creature to clear the level. After the fire-armored god entered the rankings, the various families began a new round of tests. It was impossible for humans to kill the amethyst-armored creature, but it didn't seem impossible as long as they rushed over. People were searching for ways to withstand the explosion of light. The prices of light elemental and fire elemental defensive companion beasts had increased by countless times overnight. However, it was limited to high-level companion beasts. Low-level ones were useless. Some powerful factions began to deliberately head to fire elemental dimensional zones to hunt dimensional creatures. Some people also thought of the Sui Emperor tomb, but when they arrived, they realized that the tomb had already disappeared. While others were desperately searching for fire elemental companion beasts, Zhou-Wen's body was undergoing a strange change. At that moment, Zhou-Wen was standing in front of Tiantian's hut. He didn't enter the wooden hut. The first order of chaos circulated in his body as his hand pressed on the wooden sign with the words Tiantian's hut. As the first order of chaos circulated, the words on the wooden sign slowly disappeared as though they were being sucked away by some force. When Zhou-Wen was studying the first order of chaos, he realized that the power of the time hut didn't come from the hut itself, but from these words. Chapter 1539. What are words? Zhou-Wen had been considering this problem. He had observed the time cabin for so long, but there was nothing abnormal about the things in the cabin that were enough to cause the first order of chaos to react. Only the words on the cabin were somewhat special. Sweet cabin. Past, present, future, chaos. Why did these words have special power? What was the root of this power? Why was this power related to the first order of chaos? When the chaos first opened and all things were born, what was the first order? While pondering over this problem, Zhou-Wen searched for some explanations regarding words on the internet. Most information said that words were a symbol. This explanation was naturally correct, but thinking deeper into it, words were actually a kind of coordinate. A single word represented a coordinate. Two words were like the latitude and longitude of the Earth, which could be more accurately defined as a coordinate. And three words could be the length, width, and height of the three-dimensional world. It had a more accurate positioning. The more words there were, the more accurate the coordinates might be, and the higher the space-time dimension it represented might be. Writing was a very magical thing. Originally, no one knew what it was in this world. Everything was chaotic and unknown. Only with the creation of writing could most people recognize what it was. The use of words was to give everything, visible and invisible, a coordinate defined by humans. As long as these coordinates were mentioned, anyone who had learned words would know what they were. This was equivalent to giving the chaotic world an order. The world itself didn't need order because existence itself was order. The ones who needed order were humans. It was humans who needed to discover order, and words were the best carrier of human order. After Zhou-Wen figured this out, when he touched the wooden plaque with the words engraved on it, the first order of chaos automatically circulated. The words on the wooden plaque transformed into a strange force that flowed into his body and fused with the first order of chaos, causing it to undergo a shocking transformation. After Zhou-Wen absorbed the past, present, and future words, he vaguely felt that the first order of chaos was already on the verge of calamity transformation, but it was still one step short. Therefore, Zhou-Wen came to the door and tried to see if he could absorb the words sweet cabin. In the end, these words also had magical powers. However, Zhou-Wen found it somewhat odd. The power of the words past, present, and future clearly had traces of time and space. However, the power transmitted by the words Tiantian's hut didn't seem to have much to do with time and space. Just as Zhou-Wen was wondering what was going on, the chaos egg appeared and enveloped the blood-colored avatar's body. Zhou-Wen and the blood-colored avatar were twins. Everything the blood-colored avatar felt was as though it was happening to Zhou-Wen. At that moment, he could clearly sense that the blood-colored avatar's body was undergoing a strange change. In the past, the chaos egg was a form of protection for Zhou-Wen. It was a hotbed that provided him with nutrients. However, as the blood-colored avatar's body changed, Zhou-Wen felt that the chaos egg had become his obstacle, or rather, shackles. It restrained his body, making him feel abnormally uncomfortable. It was like a person who had been locked in a small wardrobe for an entire night. His whole body had shrunk into a ball, and his knees had to reach his chest in order to squeeze in. After a night of torture, what this person wanted the most now was to get out. Zhou-Wen felt about the same. Now he had the urge to break out of the chaos egg and rush out to breathe in fresh air. He felt extremely uncomfortable. Panga's creation of the world allowed all living things to have life. Could it be that this chaos egg is also formed after destruction? Only after destroying it can it form the calamity domain. The more Zhou thought about it, the more he felt that it was right. Therefore, Zhou mustered all his strength to break out of the Chaos Egg's restraints. However, it was only now that Zhou clearly realized how terrifying the Chaos Egg's defense was. His physical strength and essence energy were already comparable to a human creature, but when such strength struck the Chaos Egg, it was difficult to leave any marks on it, much less break it. Zhou released his essence energy time and time again to strike the Chaos Egg, but he failed to shatter it. Why you have to be so tough? Aren't you just making things difficult for me? Zhou didn't realize that if it wasn't for the Chaos Egg's powerful defense, he would have died several times over. However, the advantages of the Chaos Egg had become his greatest obstacle. The more Zhou liked the Chaos Egg's defense in the past, the more pain he felt now. If 10 times didn't work, he would try 100 times. If 100 times didn't work, he would try 1,000 times. If 1,000 times didn't work, he would try 10,000 times. However, even if Zhou didn't give up, the Chaos Egg had no intention of being broken. He couldn't even break the Chaos Egg skin, much less break it. Zhou knew very well that perseverance was very important, but sometimes perseverance was only useful if one had a brain. How can I break the Chaos Egg? I'm not the real Pangu. Even if I'm Pangu, I don't have that axe that can split the heavens and earth, right? Wait, where did Pangu's axe come from? Everything in the chaos has yet to be born, so there shouldn't be the concept of an axe. The so-called Pangu axe might not really be an axe. Perhaps the myths and legends have materialized some kind of power. Then, what is the power that can split the heavens and earth? Zhou pondered quietly. He didn't want to aimlessly do useless work. Since words are the carrier of human order, when words give an originally unknown definition to everything in the world, it's equivalent to splitting the heavens and earth. The more Zhou thought about it, the more he felt that he was right. Zhou wasn't wrong. The mistake was that he was from the East District. The culture he was familiar with was slightly different from the West District's chaos mythology. It couldn't be said that he was wrong. It was just that his understanding was different, and the direction he took was also different. Originally, the Chaos Egg should have advanced to the Calamity Realm in another way, but Zhou had taken a completely different path. The West District's essence energy art had been given the East District's culture and spirit. Perhaps even the creator of the First Order of Chaos had never imagined that the First Order of Chaos could be understood in such a way. On the Chaos Egg, shimmering words gradually appeared. One horizontal, one vertical, one horizontal, one horizontal, one horizontal, and one horizontal stroke. Every time a shimmering word appeared, a portion of the Chaos Egg disintegrated and melted. As for the words, they vanished with the Chaos Egg. When the last Chaos Egg fragment melted, the blood-colored avatar's body was released. In the next second, the blood-colored avatar's light expanded as countless words spewed out of his body. Like a data stream, they circled around his body like building blocks, forming the Chaos Egg that enveloped Zhou's body. Chapter 1540. It's done. Zhou looked at the Chaos Egg outside him. Although it still looked like the Chaos Egg, it was actually completely different. The Chaos Egg in the past was a Chaos Egg, and now it was Zhou's Calamity Domain. However, what left Zhou slightly depressed was that this Calamity Domain was too small. Just like the Chaos Egg in the past, it could only accommodate him alone. He took out his phone and looked at the information. He realized that the First Order of Chaos had indeed reached the Calamity grade. Calamity Domain. First Order of Chaos. Zhou recognized these words, but he didn't understand what the ability of the First Order of Chaos Calamity Domain, which had the same name as the Essence Energy Art, was. I'll give it a try. Zhou activated the Big Dipper Dungeon and entered the W Palace. The domain of the First Order of Chaos was also interesting. It was equivalent to a Chaos Egg. When he used it, he summoned the Chaos Egg. It looked no different from when he was at the Terror grade. A Chaos Egg still enveloped his body. It was impossible to tell that the Chaos Egg was formed from words. Ignoring everything else, its defense should be much stronger, right? Zhou summoned the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors and the Tiger Soul General and got them to smash open the door to the Dubby Palace. After the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors charged at the purple crystal-armored creature, a terrifying purple explosion of light appeared. The Chaos Egg was struck by the explosion of light. Immediately, many solid essence energy crystals appeared. Just like before, they quickly filled the Chaos Egg's interior. It's no different from before. Zhou was depressed. He only hoped that the Chaos Egg was tougher than before and wouldn't explode as quickly as before. Soon, Zhou was certain that the Chaos Egg was much tougher than before after being strengthened by the Calamity Domain. The solid crystals inside were about to be compressed, but the Chaos Egg still didn't explode. Without the Chaos Egg exploding, Zhou's body couldn't hold on any longer. His body was squeezed into the solid crystals and was about to be flattened. Previously, Zhou hadn't thought of this problem. Now, he suddenly realized that it was useless for the Chaos Egg to become tough. His body couldn't withstand such compression. If the number of solid essence energy crystals continued increasing, he would definitely be squeezed to death. I'm probably the first person in this world to be squeezed to death by an essence energy crystal, right? People cry and shout, hoping to obtain some high-level primordial energy crystals, but they can't. Yet, I was squeezed to death because I had too many primordial energy crystals. This is ridiculous. If only I could exchange primordial energy crystals for shopping vouchers like in the real world. One voucher is equivalent to hundreds or thousands of primordial energy crystals. Unfortunately, primordial energy crystals aren't money or vouchers. They can't be stacked. As Zhou was thinking, he suddenly saw a bright light emit from the Chaos Egg. A word lit up inside. It was the word one. When the word lit up, Zhou realized that all the crystals had the word one. There's hope. If there's one, there's two. If there's two, there's three. Could it be? With a thought, Zhou saw a few words light up in the Chaos Egg. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 100,000, 10,000. The words representing numbers lit up one after another. When every number lit up, the primordial energy crystal in the Chaos Egg would undergo some changes. When a number in the primordial energy crystal became 2, the number of primordial energy crystals in the Chaos Egg suddenly decreased by half, instantly creating a lot of space. When it became 3, there were many fewer primordial energy crystals. The larger the number in the primordial energy crystal, the lesser the number of crystals. Holy sh*T, I can really stack numbers like money. Zhou was immediately excited. He picked up a crystal with the words 1,000 inside and immediately felt that the primordial energy contained in the crystal was as terrifying as the energy in a nuclear reactor. Clearly, the primordial energy contained in this crystal was very likely as much as 1,000 crystals. Under such circumstances, doesn't that mean I don't have to worry about the Chaos Egg exploding? After all, I can keep stacking them. Even if there are 100 million primordial energy crystals, I can stack them into one. Zhou felt that everything was worth it. However, Zhou quickly realized that his thoughts were too optimistic. The numbers in the Chaos Egg only stopped at 10,000. There were no words like 100 million. The primordial energy crystals could only stack to 10,000 in the end. Zhou attempted to activate the other words, but it was useless. Apart from the words that represented numbers that Zhou saw, the other words couldn't be activated. However, even so, it was already of great help to Zhou. Just the space saved from 10,000 primordial energy crystals stacking into one was already a great help to Zhou. It prevented him from being squeezed to death by the primordial energy crystals. As such, Zhou realized that with the Chaos Egg's power, he could easily withstand the damage of the light explosion. Zhou sized up the situation outside from inside the Chaos Egg. All he could see was a dazzling purple light. He couldn't see anything else. He could only sense that the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors was fighting the purple crystal-armored creature inside. Occasionally, he could see golden light flashing amidst the purple light. It was likely the glow of the golden flood dragon scissors. As for the tiger soul general beside him, its aura grew stronger and stronger. It had already reached the calamity grade and was constantly growing stronger. This time, I should be able to know the limit of the tiger soul general, right? Zhou thought. After a while, Zhou realized that he could see a blob of purple flames where the tiger soul general was. The purple was somewhat different from the purple of the light explosion. As the blob of flames grew stronger, he could already tell that it was the outline of the tiger soul general. This strength should be stronger than the power of the light explosion, right? That's why the flames can be seen. Is the tiger soul general really that strong? It's only at the terror grade, but it can withstand the power of a calamity grade. Furthermore, it's not an ordinary calamity grade. With a thought, Zhou issued an order to the tiger soul general to help him attack the purple crystal armor relic. The tiger soul general charged forward without any hesitation, but due to the intense battle energy fluctuations inside, even with Truth Ear's power, it couldn't hear the exact situation. Bam! After a loud bang, Zhou sensed that the tiger soul general's body flew out and slammed into the ground. It streaked far away and slammed into something before stopping. However, in the next second, the tiger soul general stood up again and charged in again. Again and again, the tiger soul general would quickly rush back in every time it fell out. Zhou could clearly sense that the tiger soul general's aura was getting stronger. The tiger soul general is considered an oddity. It's clearly only at the terror grade and doesn't even have a calamity domain, but it can rely on the combination of various skills to forcefully fight a powerful calamity creature. Zhou felt that he needed to pay attention to skills. If he had the chance, he should learn more useful skills. Chapter 1541. Crack. With the sound of scissors opening and closing, Zhou saw the explosion of light in the palace suddenly vanish. The world in front of him suddenly became clear. He saw the golden WYRM scissors floating in the hall. The tiger soul general, who was dressed in armor that resembled a burning crystal, was also standing in the hall. As for the amethyst-armored creature, it had already collapsed in the palace, its head separated from its body. His body quickly turned into purple light that dissipated. With a clanging sound, a few crystals fell to the ground. They were all high-level items with values exceeding 200. One of them was a skill crystal, but no companion egg dropped. Killed hell creature, Starlord Greed. Discovered dimensional crystal. Zhou picked up the skill crystal and took a look. The stat requirement wasn't high. 99 constitution, strength, essence energy, and speed happened to be attainable by Zhou. He needed a light elemental essence energy art. Zhou could think of a solution for this. The only difficulty was that the requirement was 99 of the light attribute. The light attribute was a special stat, so the chances of it dropping weren't high. Zhou hadn't downloaded a light elemental domain, so he hadn't dropped many light elemental crystals. The light attribute was far from meeting the requirements. Just as Zhou was feeling depressed, he suddenly realized that one of the dimensional crystals dropped by Starlord Greed was of the light attribute. Without any hesitation, Zhou absorbed the light attribute crystal that was about to reach 300. In the end, Zhou obtained 99 light attribute points. As he hadn't advanced to the calamity grade, this was already the stat limit of the terror grade. No matter how high-level the stat crystal he absorbed was, it was impossible for him to continue improving. This really doesn't make sense. The stat limit of the mythical stage is 81, but the stat limit of the terror grade is only 99. The difference is way too small. Zhou found it somewhat odd. The difference between the other levels was huge. It was almost double, but the difference between the mythical and terror grades was so small. He didn't know the reason. That was what he thought, but reality was like this. No matter how unreasonable it was, he couldn't change it. All he could do was adapt. Thankfully, 99 light attribute points was enough to meet the requirement of absorbing the skill crystal. Now, all he lacked was the terror transformation ability of the light attribute. Among the essence energy arts I simulated, the only thing that can be related to light is the ancient Sovereign Sutra. That flame of life should be considered light, right? Zhou wasn't sure. He switched his primordial energy art to the ancient Sovereign Sutra before picking up the skill crystal and attempting to absorb it. Immediately, a hot and numb force flowed out of the skill crystal and rushed into Zhou Wen's body, making his entire body feel like it was being roasted by a high temperature. Thankfully, they were in-game. If they were outside, Zhou Wen's clothes would probably have been burnt to ashes by the high temperatures. The terrifying energy brutally opened up a new primordial energy cycle in Zhou Wen's body. The terrifying heat and radiation energy made Zhou Wen believe that the blood-colored avatar's body couldn't take it any longer. Thankfully, he managed to endure it in the end and absorb Star Monarch Greed's skill crystal. Absorbed Starlord Covetous Wolf Starlord Crystal. Attained Hell Grade Essence Energy Skill Wolf Kiss. Wolf Kiss. Zhou Wen felt the skill information from the primordial energy crystal as his expression turned odd. He opened the skill column to take a look. That's right, it was Wolf Kiss. Wolf's Kiss, Hell level. The Ravenous Wolf Star is the star of desire. The Ravenous Wolf's Kiss can shock heaven and earth. What the hell is this? Zhou Wen was somewhat at a loss whether to laugh or cry. He originally imagined that with Star Monarch Greed's powerful abilities, any skill like light explosion, radiation, or high temperature would greatly increase the destructive power of Zhou Wen's skills. Who knew that it would be Wolf's Kiss? The skill introduction sounded very powerful, but when Zhou Wen fought others, he couldn't just hug and kiss them, right? Thinking back to the scene, Zhou Wen was fighting in Tianzhua. Seeing that he couldn't beat him, he could only use Wolf's Kiss, the only hell-level skill, to turn the tables. Then, Zhou Wen took the opportunity to hug in Tianzhua's head and give him a Wolf's Kiss. It was simply unsightly. Zhou Wen definitely didn't misunderstand how to use the skill. This was because the information the primordial energy crystal transmitted to his brain indicated that Wolf's Kiss was used in such a manner. How am I to use this skill? Zhou Wen was so depressed that he nearly vomited blood. This skill wasn't suitable for men. If it was used on monsters, even if Zhou Wen could kiss them, many monsters had extremely large mouths. Ignoring kissing them, if Zhou Wen really leaned his head over, he would be adding food to them. Although he didn't know how powerful Wolf's Kiss was, Zhou Wen was certain that he wouldn't use it casually. Just like how kowtowing could trigger the sigh of the king, Zhou Wen knew that it was useful, but he really couldn't bring himself to do it. Most of the time, Zhou Wen was too embarrassed to use that move. Wolf's Kiss was similar, but on second thought, Zhou Wen felt that he could use it sometimes. After distributing the other stat crystals to the companion beasts he needed, Banana Fairy's stats were already maxed out. It was useless if she didn't level up. The soul reflection mirror was almost full. Raising his stats wasn't difficult for Zhou Wen. What was difficult was raising his level. If Banana Fairy can advance to the Calamity grade, she might be able to extinguish the sun with a single Grandine wind. Why would I need to go through so much trouble? Zhou Wen only had such a thought. To extinguish the sun, it was unknown if he could even do it at the Apocalypse grade, much less at the Calamity grade. After packing his things, Zhou Wen circled the palace and realized that there was really only one hall in the palace. There were no other exits behind it, nor were there any other palaces. At the back of the palace, there was a strange altar. There seemed to be some kind of ritual runes on it. Zhou Wen controlled the blood-colored avatar to stand on it. The game immediately gave a notification. Do you want to teleport to the Jade Star Palace? Zhou Wen immediately understood that the Big Dipper dungeon was indeed a chain dungeon. There was probably a dungeon above the Big Dipper. He had to clear all 7 dungeons before he could clear the Big Dipper dungeon. The first dungeon's Starlord Covetous Wolf is already at the Hell stage. Typical dungeons get stronger the further one goes. I wonder how strong the dimensional creatures in the next 6 dungeons will be. Zhou Wen thought for a moment and chose no. He wanted to see what would happen if he chose no. System notification. Do you want to teleport out of the W Palace? Zhou Wen immediately chose yes to see where he could teleport to. The teleportation array flashed as the scene in front of Zhou Wen changed. There were dazzling flames everywhere. Zhou sized up his surroundings and realized that he was in the periphery of the W Palace. There's a way back. Zhou was overjoyed. Good night. End of chapter. Chapter 1542. Since the 7 Big Dipper dungeons were separated, he could freely choose to head to the next star palace or exit after clearing the W star. Zhou's chance had come. All he needed to do was use the magic cube to enter the W star palace, penetrate it in reality, and teleport out to return to Earth. From the looks of it, this was the only way to return to Earth before demonic neonate woke up. Penetrating the W star palace and killing Star-Lord Covetous Wolf wasn't difficult for Zhou. What was more troublesome was what about demonic neonate and grim demon. Furthermore, he needed to find 3 people to board the magic cube with him before he could activate it to enter the W star palace. Demonic neonate was still sleeping without any signs of waking up. Furthermore, he couldn't retrieve her. He couldn't even send her into the chaos space. It wasn't impossible to carry her through the W star palace, but it would be broadcasted by the magic cube. Many people would see demonic neonate. This wasn't what Zhou wanted. The most troublesome thing was to find 3 people to enter the W star palace with him, and the 3 of them were almost certain to die. Although there were many people in Regretless City, and it wasn't difficult to find 3 people to send themselves to their deaths, Zhou wasn't that kind of person. He really couldn't force people who had no grudges with him to send themselves to their deaths. I'll wait another 2 days and see what happens. It's best if demonic neonate wakes up. If she doesn't wake up, I can only use the magic cube to return. Zhou opened the Big Dipper dungeon again. He entered the W star palace again. At this moment, Star-Lord Covetous Wolf wasn't presiding over it. From the looks of it, it hadn't respawned yet. Zhou arrived at the teleportation array and chose to enter the next Jade Star Palace. Jade was the 2nd star of the Big Dipper. The pivot represented the heavens, and the jade represented the earth. Jade was also known as Gigantic Gate. According to what Zhou knew, although Jade was several times bigger than the sun, there didn't seem to be any planets near it. There was only a relatively cold ring of dust. When the teleportation array activated, the scene in front of Zhou changed. When he regained his vision, he realized that a huge door had appeared in front of him. The door's shape resembled a triumphal arch, but it was even more majestic. It was probably more than 1,000 meters tall, and it was carved from golden crystals. Standing in front of the majestic door, Zhou couldn't help but feel as tiny as an ant. And this was just the entrance to the Jade Star Palace. It was even more difficult to imagine how big the entire Star Palace was. The Jade Star Palace had a door, but no panels. Zhou stood on the steps outside the door and could see some of the sights inside the Star Palace. The interior of the Star Palace was also huge, and it was more than enough to fly a helicopter. There were dazzling crystal pillars and walls everywhere. Different from the simplicity of the W Star Palace, this Star Palace was extremely luxurious, with all sorts of engravings on it. At the very back of the Star Palace, there was a huge crystal throne. A giant wearing golden crystal armor was sitting on the crystal throne. He supported his chin with one hand, as if he was thinking about something. What a tall giant. Just sitting there, it looks like it's 100 to 200 meters tall. Zhou roughly guessed what dimensional creature was from the person's appearance. Since the guardian of the W Star was the greedy wolf Star Lord, this person should undoubtedly be the Giant Gate Star Lord. Just as Zhou was pondering over it, Giant Gate Star Lord opened his eyes. His eyes, which were much larger than car wheels, emitted a terrifying golden glow. He stared at the spot where the blood-colored avatar was standing and slowly stood up. Zhou had never seen a dimensional creature's aura as terrifying as Giant Gate Star Lord's. Perhaps there were other creatures stronger than Giant Gate Star Lord, but in terms of spirit, they might not be able to suppress him. Looking at Giant Gate, Zhou couldn't help but think of the words indomitable spirit. Zhou was already prepared to fight a tough battle. From the size of Giant Gate Star Lord's body, he knew that his body was definitely extremely powerful, and his strength was extremely violent. The Chaos Egg could withstand the burst of light because it was an area of effect attack. Its strength was greatly dispersed, and Joan wasn't sure if the Chaos Egg could withstand a strength-type dimensional creature like Giant Gate Star-Lord. If I really can't withstand it, I can only place my hopes on my dodging ability. Unfortunately, I've given my heavenly robe and lucky equipment to Wong Lu. Otherwise, it wouldn't be difficult for me to dodge Giant Gate Star-Lord's attack. Joan was still thinking of a countermeasure when he suddenly saw Giant Gate open his mouth. In the next instant, a terrifying roar burst out of Stellar Lord Mammoth Gate's mouth, forming a sonic boom that instantly struck Joan. Joan never expected such a move. He had always believed that Giant Gate was a strength type, so he never expected him to have a sonic attack. Thankfully, Joan reacted quickly enough. He had already summoned the Chaos Egg to protect himself. When the sonic boom struck the Chaos Egg, it immediately produced a large number of solid essence energy crystals. The number was about the same as the number produced by Star-Lord Greedy Wolf's attack. From the looks of it, Giant Gate should also be at the Hell stage. That's good. Joan felt relieved. In the Big Dipper dungeon, if one Star Palace was stronger than the other, it was unimaginable how strong the Guardian in the final Star Palace would be. It was impossible to clear it. Giant Gate wasn't much stronger than Star-Lord Greedy Wolf. This gave Joan hope. Perhaps the 7 Star Lords of the Big Dipper were at the Hell stage. Then, he still had a chance of clearing the Big Dipper. Although his strength was about the same as Star-Lord Greedy Wolf's, his abilities were completely different. Giant Gate's Sonic Boom Attack and Star-Lord Greedy Wolf's Light Blast were 2 completely different systems. Joan relied on the Chaos Egg to take the hits. At the same time, he summoned the Golden WIRM Scissors and ordered them to attack Giant Gate. However, not long after the Golden WIRM Scissors flew out, its speed became slower and slower. Before it reached Giant Gate, the Golden WIRM Scissors stopped. It can't be. Is Giant Gate's Sonic Boom so powerful that even the Golden WIRM Scissors attack can't completely tear through it? Joan was alarmed. However, what happened next left him even more incredulous. The Golden WIRM Scissors actually flew back and aggressively chained at the Chaos Egg. The Chaos Egg had no chance of dodging the Sonic Boom. As for the Golden WIRM Scissors' destructive power, even the Chaos Egg couldn't completely withstand it. A hole was torn open. The Sonic Boom rushed in through the hole before the phone screen went black. What's going on? Why did the Golden WIRM Scissors suddenly turn on me? Joan hurriedly checked the Golden WIRM Scissors information and realized that it was still intact. It was still his companion beast, and there was nothing wrong with it. However, he couldn't figure out why the Golden WIRM Scissors had suddenly lost control and attacked him. Chapter 1543. Based on Stellar Lord Mammoth Gate's build, he's not a strength type, but a sound type ability. This is really unexpected, Joan thought to himself. Furthermore, the center represents the sky, the jade represents the earth, and the Alioth represents sound. Why is Stellar Lord Mammoth Gate a sound-type dimensional creature? Joan couldn't figure out this problem, but he was certain that just the vibrations of the sound waves weren't enough to make the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors attack its owner. There had to be some other power at work. Joan entered the dungeon a few more times and quickly figured out what was going on. Stellar Lord Mammoth Gate's Sound Howl was indeed a sound-type ability. Furthermore, this sound-type power wasn't just a simple vibrational attack. It also had powers similar to Charm. That power was useless against Joan, who was wearing the Truth Listener earring. However, the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors and other companion beasts seemed unable to withstand the invasion of that power. As long as they were too far away from Joan, they would easily betray him. This left Joan depressed. His own strength wasn't enough to fight Stellar Lord Mammoth Gate. Now, he was relying on his companion beasts to keep up appearances. Now, companion beasts would betray him if they were too far away from him. This was a serious problem. From the looks of it, I have to grind a few more times to see if Stellar Lord Mammoth Gate has any other weaknesses. Joan repeatedly grinded the Jade Star Palace. Although he was killed by Stellar Lord Mammoth Gate every time, he still enjoyed it. While Zhou was studying Stellar Lord Mammoth Gate, the various factions on Earth were still working hard to enter the Dubby Star Palace alive. Fire elemental dimensional creatures were repeatedly slaughtered by the various factions. The price of high-level, fire elemental defensive companion beasts was already ridiculously high. Just as the various factions were collecting fire elemental defensive equipment, the Rubik's Cube screen moved again. Someone had barged into the Dubby Star Palace, and it was a human. It was a young man in gorgeous armor who looked to be in his 20s or 30s. Human? How did he enter? He can actually withstand such high temperatures? No one knew who the young man was as they whispered. Strange. Didn't they say that only 4 people can enter? Why is he alone? What's the point of entering? Under that kind of light explosion, even those dinosaurs with incomparably strong physiques would find it hard to resist. If he were to go in, he would definitely die. Looks like he's a death warrior of some faction that's used to scout the path. Death warriors, no doubt. What a pity. He was so handsome, but he died just like that. The women's focus was different from a men's. What a sin. I wonder which family sent such a young man to his death. The handsome young man couldn't hear the people's comments. Even if he could, he wouldn't care. Step by step, he walked towards the gate of the Dubby Star Palace. He stretched out his flawless hands that were even more beautiful than a woman's and pushed open the gate of the Dubby Star Palace. Seeing Star Lord Greed in the Star Palace, the young man walked in without hesitation. When Star Lord Greed saw someone enter the Star Palace, he did not say a word before unleashing a terrifying explosion of light. The entire Star Palace and the plaza outside were instantly enveloped by the power of the purple light explosion. There was not a single blind spot. The live broadcast from the Rubik's Cube had been processed by the Rubik's Cube. Even an ordinary person could see the figure of a young man in the explosion of light. Everyone believed that he was dead for sure, but the young man didn't reveal the fear and horror they had imagined in the explosion of light. The explosion of light didn't reduce his body to ashes. It didn't even injure his hair. The armor on the young man's body emitted a dazzling glow that was even more dazzling than the explosion of light. It was as though the sun had enveloped him. How is this possible? Under such high temperatures and radiation. He's actually fine. Is he still human? When did such a young expert appear among us humans? He can't be the human emperor, can he? Ordinary people discussed as they guessed the origins of the young man. As for factions like the 6 families, they had already seen through the young man's origins. Holy body of the sun. That young man should come from the Holy Land's Holy Sun Temple. I never expected the Holy Land to take action so quickly. Zhang Chunxiu muttered to himself. Doesn't the family clan of gods also have the holy body of the sun? Why isn't he from the family clan of gods? Zhang Yuji was also watching the live broadcast and asked in puzzlement. The family clan of gods does indeed have the holy body of the sun passed down from the Holy Sun Temple, but the family clan of gods doesn't have the armor on him. If I'm not wrong, that armor should be a manifestation of a guardian. Furthermore, it possesses extremely pure power of the sun, even purer than the power of the sun of the holy body of the sun. I'm afraid only those fellows from the Holy Sun Temple can create such a guardian. The family clan of gods doesn't have one, Zhang Chunxiu said. The armor on the saint from the Holy Sun Temple emitted the sun divine light. The power of the explosion of light was actually absorbed by his armor. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, the saint walked into the teleportation array and teleported away from the Dubby Star Palace. Soon, the Rubik's Cube screen switched to the rankings. There was an additional name on the rankings. Furthermore, it was ranked in front of Fire Armored God, snatching first place. Saint Nine Sons. It's indeed a fellow from the Holy Sun Temple, Xia Luchuan said with a frown. Upon seeing this name, people realized that the young man was a saint from the Holy Land. The Holy Land is indeed powerful. Any random saint can charge up the rankings. Humans really have to rely on guardians. That depends on who it is. I, Human Emperor, don't need a guardian. Human Emperor probably can't enter. Otherwise, why hasn't he appeared? Aren't you curious as to why Nine Suns can enter the dimensional zone alone? No one answered his question. Some people thought of a possibility, but the possibility was too cruel. They couldn't say it out loud, even though they had such thoughts in their hearts. Not only had a human passed the W Star Palace, but he had also suppressed fire-armored god and obtained first place. Instantly, he was in the limelight. The entire alliance was discussing Nine Suns. Only a saint from the Holy Sun Temple can pass the W Star Palace so easily, right? Nine Suns is just too cool. I'm afraid he's another human emperor-level expert. Most people weren't stingy with their praises. Even Professor Gu, who had always been pessimistic, said on the program that the W Star Palace was a dimensional zone tailor-made for Saint Nine Suns. It was unlikely that anyone among humans could reach the level of Nine Suns. If nothing unexpected happened, Nine Suns might very well obtain first place on the Rubik's Cube rankings. Chapter 1544. Nine Yang, well done. Xiao looked at Nine Yang, who had walked out of the cube, and greeted him with a smile. There's nothing to be proud of. Wearing this holy sun armor, even a pig can do those things, Nine Yang said coldly. You can't say that. There are so many saints in the Sun Holy Temple. Only you were chosen to possess it. That's your strength, Xiao said. Nine Yang's expression didn't change. There's nothing to be happy about. My opponents aren't them to begin with. I only want to defeat Human Emperor. Do you think Human Emperor will appear this time? Probably. Since he claims to be Human Emperor, he probably won't sit back and watch us obtain the W Companion Beast, right? Xiao said. That's good. With that said, Nine Yang turned around and left, ignoring Xiao. Xiao sighed softly as he watched Nine Yang walk away. He muttered to himself, I hope that fellow doesn't go. Nine Yang and the Guardian on him are invincible existences in a place like W Star. Zhou Wan, who was grinding dungeons, suddenly sneezed. He wiped his nose and muttered to himself, It's probably because you misses me. It's been so long since I've returned to see her. I wonder how you is now. Zhou Wan hadn't found a way to kill Stellar, Lord Giant Gate. Just as he was about to continue grinding, he heard tragic cries and shouts coming from the city. What's that? Zhou Wan shifted his attention slightly and immediately realized that there was a blood-red snake in Regretless City. It was scuttling on the streets and roofs. It opened its mouth and swallowed a human. Are these the devil snakes they were talking about? Zhou Wan immediately thought of the information Grim Demon had previously obtained. As the snake was at the terror grade, the humans in Regretless City couldn't see it at all after its terror transformation. They could only be devoured. Many people knelt on the ground and prayed loudly to the Demon King instead of God. When Zhou Wan saw that the snake still wanted to swallow him, he teleported and summoned the golden WYRM scissors. He cut the snake into two with one slash. Plop, plop. After the snake died, its body exited its terror form and fell to the ground. Large amounts of snake blood dyed the nearby streets red as though it had just rained blood. Lord Demon King, long live. When people saw the snake corpse in Zhou when floating in midair, they immediately knelt down and kowtowed to him like devout believers, thanking him for saving their lives. They seemed to believe that Zhou Wan was the Demon King of Lost Paradise. Zhou Wan didn't wish to explain as he searched the snake corpse and found an essence energy crystal. There are also essence energy crystals in the bodies of dimensional creatures. Then, will there be a companion egg? Zhou Wan suddenly had the urge to see if he could find companion eggs if he killed all the big shot creatures in the dimension. Zhou Wan only had this thought. At the very least, he wasn't in the mood to experiment. Only after returning to the graveyard did the humans dare to get up from the ground. They looked at each other with complicated expressions. Not long after Zhou Wan returned to the cemetery, he saw Grim Demon fly back before he could even take out his phone. What happened? Zhou Wan sized up Grim Demon and realized that he was injured in many places. He couldn't help but ask with a frown, I'm fine. That snake didn't take advantage of me either. Grim Demon recounted his experience. In a mountain range behind Regretless City, there were indeed red snakes. Furthermore, there were quite a number of them. Grim Demon wanted to go further to take a look, but after circling around a few times, he was still discovered by the red snakes. Ordinary red snakes were naturally no match for Grim Demon. Even many Terrorgrade red snakes had been killed by Grim Demon. However, when the Calamity Grade red snake appeared, Grim Demon had no choice but to flee. These red snakes are extraordinary. They must be related to the legendary Satan. Their bodies are much stronger than ordinary creatures of the same level, Grim Demon said. Just as Zhou was about to say something, he suddenly realized that the elder had brought a few people to the entrance of the cemetery. "Your Excellency, I seek an audience," the elder said respectfully after knocking on the door. "What are you doing here?" Zhou walked to the door, opened it, and asked the elder. The elder hurriedly knelt and kowtowed with the humans beside him. After bowing, he pointed at the two girls beside him and said, "Your Excellency, these are the most beautiful girls in our city. I hope you like them." "What do you mean?" Zhou looked at the two girls beside the elder. They looked 17 or 18 years old and were extremely beautiful. They had a high-nose bridge, deep eye sockets, and large eyes. They looked like typical people from the West District. She had a head of reddish-brown hair, which gave her a different kind of charm. What was even more shocking was that the two girls looked exactly the same. They were a pair of twins. "Your Excellency, you have protected our regretless city for so many years, preventing us from being persecuted by the creatures of the outside world. Now, we just want to repay you. Your Excellency, we didn't bring your maidservants with you, so there must be many inconveniences. If there's anything you need, just instruct them." The elder said, "There's no need." Zhou rejected him immediately. What era was it? Humans weren't inferior to anyone, so there was no need to kneel to others. Zhou originally imagined that the two girls would be happy that they didn't need to serve him, but to his surprise, the two girls' faces turned pale when they heard Zhou's rejection. One of the girls rushed forward and hugged Zhou's calf. "Your Majesty, please let us follow you. We'll be your slaves. You can leave anything to us. Even if you want us to die, we'll be willing. If you don't like us, take our lives. We are willing to give up everything for you." Zhou was rendered speechless as he looked at the sincere girls who looked like crazy fangirls. Looking at the determined eyes of the two girls, it was as if they would immediately commit suicide if Zhou didn't let them stay. "Leave the two of them behind." "You can leave," Zhou said to the elder. "Your Excellency, have a good rest. I won't disturb you any longer." Only then did the elder feel relieved. He didn't dare look up as he bowed his head and left the cemetery, closing the door. "What are your names?" Zhou asked as he sized up the two girls. "I'm Liz. She's my sister, Liam," the girl who had been hugging Zhou's leg said as she pointed at her sister. "What do you know how to do?" Zhou asked again. "As long as you instruct us, Your Excellency, we can do anything," Liz and Liam said with their heads lowered. Their cheeks were still unusually red. Chapter 1545. You can do anything? Zhou sized up Liz and Lim and asked thoughtfully. Liz and Lim trembled as their faces turned even redder. Their bodies trembled as they lowered their heads and said, "It's our honor to be able to sacrifice ourselves for His Majesty." Before the two of them came, the city lord had already instructed them many things. It was precisely because of the many instructions that they had so many thoughts. His Majesty is the king of the lost paradise. If we can give birth to His Majesty's children, we will be able to break through the shackles of the human body and allow our descendants to reach the mythical stage. They will be able to fight those god fiends and will no longer be pure meat. Whether our race can control its fate in our own hands in the future will depend on you. Thinking of the city lord's heavy tone, Liz and Lim couldn't help but grit their teeth. Although they were still afraid, they still puffed out their chests and fearfully showed their beautiful side to Zhou. "If I asked you to die, would you be willing?" Zhou asked. He could only return with the help of the Rubik's Cube, but he needed 4 people to enter it. Zhou needed 3 more people, and he was worried that he couldn't find anyone. When Liz and Lim heard that, tears welled up in their eyes as they were extremely afraid. His Majesty is an omniscient existence. How can our schemes deceive Him? His Majesty, we were wrong. It's all our fault. It has nothing to do with our clansmen. If you want to punish us, punish us. It's fine even if you want our lives, Liz and Lim said as they knelt on the ground, trembling. What did you do wrong? Joan asked. We shouldn't. We shouldn't have wanted. Liz said a few things, but she couldn't say them. Wanted what? Joan asked with a frown. He thought that the people of Regretless City wanted to secretly harm him. Joan was clearly overthinking things. The people of Regretless City revered the Demon King like a god. So how could they dare to harm him? We shouldn't have wanted to borrow your seed, Lim said through gritted teeth. Thankfully, Joan hadn't drunk any water. Otherwise, he would have choked to death. He widened his eyes as he looked at the kneeling Liz and Lim, unable to believe his ears. Joan even thought that he had heard wrongly. He wanted them to repeat it, but on second thought, it was impossible for him to have heard wrongly. It was useless to repeat it again. It would only make him more embarrassed. Since you know you're in the wrong, tell me, how should I punish you? Joan deliberately asked coldly. Your Majesty, please forgive our clansmen. We're willing to commit suicide. Liz and Lim's expressions were filled with determination. They took out their short swords and were about to end their lives. Did I say I wanted you to die? Joan's indifferent voice sounded. Liz and Liam looked at Joan in bewilderment, unsure of what he meant. Now, they only felt that this Demon King was temperamental. They simply couldn't use human thinking to understand his behavior, and their hearts became more and more fearful. From now on, your lives no longer belong to you, Joan said to them. Yes, our lives belong to you, your Majesty. Liz and Lim immediately knelt down. Get up, prepare some food, and clean up this place. Joan kept them alive because he wanted to use them when he entered the Rubik's Cube in the future. He didn't need them for the time being. However, Joan was very curious about what they ate. It was a good opportunity to try it. Liz and Lim felt as though they had been pardoned as they left the cemetery gratefully. When they returned and told the city lord about the matter, the city lord and the others turned pale from fright and nearly peed their pants. They only calmed down when they heard the end. Your Majesty is indeed an omniscient existence. How can you not know my schemes? I nearly harmed the entire city. Thankfully, your Majesty gave us a chance. Liz, Lim, prepare the best food in our city. No matter what, we have to satisfy your Majesty. After the elder said that, he felt worried. He personally made the preparations and did the best in all the details. Finally, he handed the finished product to Liz and Lim and got them to send the food into the cemetery. Joan was grinding when he saw each of them carry a basin in. The basin was filled with clear water, and there were a few crystalline green leaves soaking in the water. Your Majesty, please have your meal. Liz and Lim knelt in front of Joan and raised the two basins above their heads. Are these leaves delicious? Joan was puzzled, but he still reached out to take a leaf and placed it in his mouth. He took a bite. With just one bite, Joan frowned. Although the leaves didn't taste bad, they definitely weren't delicious either. They tasted about the same as the lettuce leaves on Earth. Joan didn't like Western food, nor did he like raw lettuce. He looked at the two sisters and asked, Do you usually eat this? Your Majesty, this is the precious leaf of emerald grass. It's a very rare and delicious food. It's very rare to find it, and it's impossible for ordinary people to eat it. Only during celebrations and sacrifices will everyone share a little. Liz answered. Then what do you usually eat? Joan asked again. Usually, we eat the roots of stone grass, Liz answered. Go get some of the roots of stone grass. Joan couldn't imagine that such leaves that resembled lettuce would be a precious food in their mouths. How terrible would the food they usually ate be? The two sisters were terrified, thinking that Joan wasn't satisfied with their hospitality and wanted to beg for mercy. Joan repeatedly said that he didn't blame them and got them to bring the roots of the stone grass over. Only then did they leave in doubt. When they brought the roots of the stone grass over, Joan took a look. It looked pretty good. The roots were jade white and as thick as a finger. The segments were rather beautiful. However, when Joan bit it, he immediately felt a bitter juice flow into his mouth. Is this thing for humans to eat? Zhou suspected that the people of Regretless City were messing with him. How could something that was even more bitter than bitter gourd be food they usually ate? However, Zhou used Truth Listener's scan it and knew that they weren't lying. Most people in Regretless City who were eating were like this. Looking at the trembling sisters, Zhou sighed inwardly. These people in Regretless City are even more miserable than the people on Earth. On Earth, humans had stood at the top of the food chain for thousands of years. At the very least, they had enjoyed it. However, these people were at the bottom of the food chain in the dimension. Ignoring enjoyment, it was impossible for them to even eat meat. Any dimensional creature was at the mythical stage. Who could they kill? This is for you. Zhou took out 2 pieces of bread and threw them at the sisters. Chapter 1546. Liz and Lim caught the bread and looked at Zhou in fear and trepidation. They didn't know what Zhou had given them. Under Zhou's signal, they realized that it was food. When they took a bite, their eyes widened as their beautiful eyes were filled with disbelief. Your Majesty, you're too kind to us. This is food for god fiends, right? You actually gave us food for god fiends. Even if we die, we won't be able to repay your grace. Liz and Lim were so touched that tears almost flowed out of their eyes as they thanked him profusely. How pitiful. You're so touched by eating bread. If I were to give you 2 meat buns, wouldn't your entire family be moved to become slaves? Zhou thought. After you finish eating, clean the cemetery. Zhou returned to the rocking chair he had taken out and lay down to continue grinding. He wanted to give it a try and see if there was a way to bring them out alive. These people were all people with bitter lives. Zhou really couldn't bear to use their lives to exchange for a chance to return home. Master, we'll go now. Zhou didn't notice that the way Liz and Lim addressed him was a little different. They couldn't bear to eat the bread at all. They put it away carefully and began cleaning the cemetery. From time to time, they would peek at Zhou, who was playing games on the rocking chair. To them, everything about Zhou was novel and mysterious. They really haven't seen the world. They actually sold their lives for 2 pieces of bread. What a joke, Grim Demon said with a twitch of his lips. There's nothing funny about it. It's the same for you guardians, much less them, Zhou said. Nonsense. How can I be the same as them? Grim Demon was immediately unhappy. How is it different? To them, bread is something they have never had before, so they will be touched. To you, those rare items that can enhance your strength won't make you risk your life. In essence, they're just rare items. There's no difference, Zhou said. How can it be the same? It's completely different, all right? Grim Demon retorted. Then tell me, what's the difference? Zhou asked. There are many differences. The value of the items is different, and their effects are different. Grim Demon retorted. Zhou ignored Grim Demon and lay there, minding his own business. Why aren't you talking? Since I can't win an argument, I'll play dead. Right? Say something. Grim Demon circled Zhou, but Zhou ignored him. He flew into a rage. Zhou ignored him completely, treating him as air. Grim Demon had spoken angrily all day. If it wasn't for the fact that he felt that he couldn't defeat Zhou, he would have long slapped him. Suddenly, Zhou frowned and looked up at the sky above Mountain City. You bugs, you actually dared to kill the living beings of my race. Originally, I wanted to rear you as food. Now that you're courting death, all of you can go and die. A sharp and strange eunuch's voice rang out. On the mountain peak behind Regretless City, there was a huge scarlet snake with its body coiled around the mountain. The huge snake head was suspended above Regretless City, flicking its tongue from time to time. That snake was really huge and powerless. Just its head was almost the size of half of No Regret City. The humans in the city were horrified. Many of them collapsed to the ground in fright. Such a huge snake only needed 1 bite to devour them all. They couldn't even escape. No good. Why is this fellow here? Grim Demon was alarmed when he saw the giant snake. He beckoned Zhou to escape. Previously, Grim Demon had encountered this giant snake and nearly failed to return. Master, please save our clansmen. Liz and Lim rushed over and repeatedly kowtowed to Zhou. I'll give you a chance now. Things like you crawlers definitely don't have the ability to kill living beings of my race. Tell me who killed it. I can spare half of you today. I'll only eat half of you." The giant snake's voice sounded again. Everyone was even more alarmed. The giant snake originally imagined that these humans would quickly submit and tell it who killed the ancient snake. However, to its surprise, although everyone was trembling, no one said a word or told it who killed the ancient snake. All of them knelt on the ground and prayed in Zhou-Wen's direction, muttering something about Lord Demon King. "It looks like you don't want to live." The giant snake was enraged as it opened its mouth to devour a portion of the humans. When they knew fear, they would naturally speak. However, before the giant snake could exert its strength, it heard a voice say, "I killed that snake." The giant snake stopped its mouth and looked down at the source of the voice. He saw a human standing on the roof of a stone building. The voice just now had come from that human's mouth. "A mere human actually dares to lie in front of me. From the looks of it, you really have a death wish. I'll fulfill your wish," the giant snake said as it opened its mouth and sucked at Zhou. A huge suction force sucked everything near Zhou went into the giant snake's mouth like a tornado. Liz, Lim, and the nearby humans were swept into the air as they flew towards the snake's mouth with tragic cries. "Master!" Liz and Lim were still shouting, while the others were calling out for Lord Demon King. At this point, no one had exposed Zhou. It was obvious that their fear of the Demon King was greater than the giant snake. Zhou extended his hand, and the golden flood dragon scissors transformed into a golden beam of light that slashed at the giant snake. The giant snake never expected a human to have such powerful strength. By the time it saw the golden flood dragon scissors, it was already too late. Sanguine light spewed out from the giant snake's body as it opened its mouth to bite at the golden flood dragon scissors, hoping to swallow it. However, the golden flood dragon scissors opened and closed, cutting the giant snake's head into two. The blood from the giant snake's body immediately flowed down the mountain like a waterfall. Boom! The giant snake's body also fell and was about to smash into the city. The giant snake's body was even bigger than No Regrets City. If it was hit, the entire city would probably be destroyed. Roar! Tyrant Behemoth was summoned by Zhou. Its gigantic body stood at the foot of the mountain as it held the giant snake's body with its claws, preventing it from falling. Long live Lord Demon King. The city lord led the people to kneel in Zhou-Wen's direction. They naturally treated Tyrant Behemoth as a devil summoned by Zhou. From their point of view, as long as the Demon King was in the city, they wouldn't have to worry about the threat of the mutated creatures. How could there be an existence stronger than the Demon King in the world? "Master!" Liz and Lim's eyes lit up as they knelt there, looking at Zhou with admiration and reverence. Chapter 1547. Tyrant Behemoth placed the giant snake at the foot of the mountain. After the giant snake died, its body was easily torn apart by Tyrant Behemoth's sharp claws because it had lost its energy and activity. Not long after, Zhou saw that a portion of the snake's bones were blood red in color and emitted a strange energy. It was likely a body part of a calamity. These parts were stored in the Chaos Bead by Zhou. This was a good item from a calamity grade. After advancing to the calamity grade, due to the huge energy requirement, he needed such high-energy flesh and bones to replenish his body's energy. Otherwise, he might really starve to death. Tsukuyami and company were examples. After leaving Earth, they had to hunt calamity creatures to maintain their energy. Inside the snake corpse, he also discovered a companion egg. It excited Zhou greatly. This was a calamity-grade companion beast that was extremely difficult to drop. There was too much snake meat left, so Zhou only took a portion and placed it in the chaos space. The rest was left for the people in Regretless City to improve their lives. Many of the people here had never eaten meat their entire lives. They didn't even know how to roast it. It was only after Zhou told them how to roast it that they managed to eat roasted snake meat. After a mouthful of snake meat, without any seasoning, Many people were so excited that they cried. Long live the Demon King. Many people praised Zhou when as they ate the snake meat. In the distant valley, a small snake was poking its head out of a crevice in the mountain. After looking for a while, it drilled into the mountain and disappeared. Your Majesty, this meat is too delicious. This is the best part one left for you. Liz ran over with a bowl of snake meat and offered it to Zhou. You eat. Calamity-grade snake meat was definitely very delicious, but they were like barbarians. They roasted it and ate it directly. Ignoring the cumin and chili powder, they didn't even add salt. Zhou wasn't used to it. What's more, their skill at roasting snake meat was too poor. Some parts of the meat were not roasted well, while others were already burnt. Your Majesty, this is specially for you. If Sis eats it, she'll definitely be cursed to death by everyone. Lim was much livelier. Although she was still very respectful to Zhou, she wasn't as reserved as before. It seemed that because they had saved No Regrets City, the sisters felt that the Demon King had already regarded them as his own people. Come here, Zhou called out. Liz came over with a bowl, picked up a piece of snake meat, and said, Master, let me serve you. Place it on the table. Zhou was at a loss whether to laugh or cry. This place was just too backward. There wasn't even a knife and fork to eat, much less chopsticks. That's right. They just eat some grass roots and leaves. There's no need for cutlery. On second thought, Zhou understood their difficulties. Liz had no choice but to place the bowl on the table. Zhou took out his knife and fork and cut off the undercooked and charred parts, leaving only a portion that was roasted better. Then he took out his barbecue seasoning and sprinkled it on the meat before cutting it into small pieces and eating it slowly with chopsticks. Zhou preferred to eat kebabs, but these guys were roasted in large chunks, so he could only eat them this way. Liz and Lim stared at Zhou with widened eyes. They had never seen anyone eat like Zhou. They felt that the pair of chopsticks was like a divine artifact. Master is indeed the Demon King. Even when eating, he looks so elegant. Liz thought to herself. Liam stared at the meat in a daze. Her sense of smell was very sensitive, and the smell of the roasted meat was completely different from the original meat. The smell made Liam salivate uncontrollably. She couldn't help but swallow her saliva, and her stomach growled. They tried roasting meat, and when they were almost done with it, they immediately sent a piece of roasted meat to Zhou. They hadn't even taken a bite. I don't want to eat this anymore. You guys eat it. Don't waste it. Zhou put down his chopsticks and walked back to the rocking chair. He lay down and took out his phone to check the information. Thank you, Master. Liz and Lim saw that Zhou's chopsticks and cutlery were placed there, but they didn't dare use them. All they did was carefully pick up the roasted meat with their hands. The moment the roasted meat entered their mouths, it was the saltiness of the salt and the spiciness of the chili powder, followed by the freshness of the cumin. Finally, the tenderness of the meat and the fragrance of the gravy seeped out, instantly filling their entire mouth. This complicated taste assaulted the sisters' taste buds. It was something they had never experienced before. They felt as though their hearts had melted with the roasted meat. Is this the food that the Demon King eats? It's really delicious. It's great to be able to follow the Demon King. Even if we die now, we won't have any regrets. The two women felt that they had lived all these years in vain. If Zhou knew what they were thinking, he would probably be at a loss whether to laugh or cry. A little bit of roasted meat could be exchanged for 2 lives. Human lives were too worthless. However, Zhou wasn't in the mood to pay attention to them, nor did he know what they were thinking. Now, Zhou was reading Tyrant Behemoth's information. The evolved Tyrant Behemoth's stats didn't exceed Zhou's expectations. Tyrant Behemoth, Calamity Grade, Evolvable, Life Providence, Immense Strength, Devouring Mountains and Rivers Life Soul, Violent Crown Wheel of Destiny, Absolute Strength, S Grade, Terror Transformation, Tyrant Calamity Domain, Super Domination Domain, Mortal Grade, Strength, 100 Speed, 100 Constitution, 100 Essence Energy, 100 Talent Skill, Mountain Devouring, Rampage, Behemoth, Armor Penetration, Piercing, Laceration, Poisonous Fangs, Bite, Ever Victorious, Unstoppable Companion Form, boxing glove. The stats and skills were within Zhou Wen's imagination. The main thing was to see what the Calamity Domain was. From the introduction, the Super Domination Domain was likely a domain that enhanced one's strength. Zhou Wen didn't study it too much. He would slowly try it out when he had the chance in the future. Now, what Zhou Wen mainly wanted to study was the giant snake companion egg. The companion egg had already been put away by Zhou Wen in-game as he checked its information. Ancient Snake, Calamity Grade Life Providence, Devil Life Soul, Snake Demon Wheel of Destiny, Devil's Language, S Grade, Terror Transformation, Blood Shadow Calamity Domain, Temptation Domain, Hell Grade, Strength, 278 Speed, 267 Constitution, 245 Essence Energy, 232 Talent Skill, Whale Devouring, Poisonous Fangs, Laceration Companion Form. Magic Staff Zhou, when carefully studied Ancient Snake's information and realized that it was a very surprising companion beast. This was the first time Zhou Wen had seen a companion form like a magic staff. He had previously heard that there were magic staff-type companion beasts in the West District. Magic staffs had magic skills. However, the staff that Ancient Snake had transformed into was likely somewhat different from ordinary magic staffs. Zhou Wen didn't think much of Ancient Snake's skills, but its Calamity Domain seemed rather interesting. Chapter 1548. Legend has it that Satan transformed into an ancient snake to lure Adam and Eve into depravity. Could this ancient snake's temptation domain be related to that legend? Zhou Wen guessed. To know the exact effects of the temptation domain, he had to test it out. Zhou Wen hatched the ancient snake and summoned it in the form of a staff. A snake-headed staff appeared in Zhou Wen's hand. It was about 2 meters long. The head of the staff was the snake's head, and the staff's tail was the snake's tail. In the middle was a coiled snake's body. Its body was as red as blood, and its eyes were like 2 rubies. They shimmered with a demonic glow, making it look extremely strange. Zhou Wen waved it a few times and injected primordial energy into the staff, but he realized that the staff didn't have any long-range attack abilities, nor did it come with any magic. What kind of crappy staff is this? Could it be that a mage uses a staff like a rod? Is this a mage or a warrior? Zhou Wen muttered to himself. He brought Ancient Snake to the dungeon in-game and allowed it to return to its original form. A gigantic ancient snake appeared in front of Zhou Wen. With such a huge body, it was definitely powerful in close combat. However, what Zhou Wen wanted to know wasn't its close combat abilities, but the use of its domain. The dimensional creatures rushed towards Zhou Wen. Although they were all low-level creatures, with none at the mythical stage, Zhou Wen still got Ancient Snake to use its domain to test its abilities. Zhou Wen originally imagined that a companion beast like Ancient Snake would cause quite a stir when it released its domain, but to his surprise, there weren't any photoelectric effects. All he heard was a hissing sound coming from Ancient Snake's mouth. Although the sound wasn't loud, it sounded like the murmurs of a devil. It left Zhou Wen feeling vexed. Zhou Wen only felt vexed. The other dimensional creatures that approached Ancient Snake seemed to have gone mad as they wrestled with each other. The scene was chaotic. Zhou Wen was overjoyed. Clearly, the temptation domain was a domain that could throw the enemy's mind into chaos. It could even make enemies kill each other. This reminded Zhou Wen of the dimensional creature on Merak. Its sound elemental powers could actually make the golden flood dragon scissors turn against it. There seemed to be some similarities. He walked into the dungeon with Ancient Snake. This feeling was indeed satisfying. He didn't even need to do anything for the dimensional creatures to fight among themselves. It was like a god that controlled all life. However, the temptation domain wasn't invincible. Zhou Wen attempted to get Ancient Snake to use the temptation domain on him, but it was useless. All he felt was some mental pressure. The creatures on Merak seemed to have a similar ability, but it's even stronger than Ancient Snake's temptation domain. I wonder if Ancient Snake's temptation domain will be able to resist Star Monarch Mammoth Gate's power. With this in mind, Zhou Wen immediately activated the Big Dipper dungeon. The Dubby Palace's Star-Lord Greed hadn't respawned yet, so Joan went straight to the Jade Palace and fought Star-Lord Jumin again. Stellar Lord Giant Gate let out a terrifying roar again as a powerful shockwave surged over. Joan first summoned the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors and the Ancient Snake before using the Chaos Egg to protect himself. The Golden Scissor Dragon went against the sound waves, while the Ancient Snake stood there motionlessly. It flicked its tongue and let out a strange whisper. The Ancient Snake's whisper didn't have any lethality. When it encountered Stellar Lord Giant Gate's roar, it seemed to vanish. There was almost no sound. The Ancient Snake's coarse skin and thick flesh allowed it to withstand for the time being. What Joan was most worried about was that the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors would fly back and attack him ruthlessly. Strangely, that did not happen this time. The Golden Flood Dragon Scissors quickly rushed over and chopped off Star-Lord Jumin's head with one slash. Killed Stellar Lord Giant Gate. Discovered Dimensional Crystal. He died just like that? Joan still found it unbelievable. Stellar Lord Giant Gate only dropped 2 stat crystals and no companion eggs, leaving Joan somewhat disappointed. However, it was already a pleasant surprise to be able to kill Stellar Lord Giant Gate. He couldn't ask for too much. The Golden Flood Dragon Scissors is really too practical. As long as I can get close, I can even split someone of the same level into 2. Joan increasingly liked the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors. During this period of time, Joan had also attempted the Venus dungeon, but he was killed by the strange tool every time. Up to now, Joan didn't know what the tool was, nor had he won once. It was useless even if he brought the Hell-grade Golden Flood Dragon Scissors. He would still die the same way. After feeding the stat crystals to the companion beasts, Joan arrived at the back of the Jade Star Palace. Indeed, there was a teleportation array there. Without any hesitation, Joan chose to head for the 3rd star, Fecta. There was relatively little information regarding Fecta. It wasn't as famous as Dubhi and Merak. Joan only knew its name, but he wasn't too sure about the legends. Fecta Palace wasn't as exaggerated as Jade Star Palace. It looked like an ordinary temple on Earth. When he opened the door to Fecta Palace, he saw a person in green armor inside. Joan only remembered the name of Fecta, but he couldn't recall the name of the corresponding Stellar Lord. Regardless of what Stellar Lord the other party was, Joan only had the same set of tricks. He used the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors and Ancient Snake's Temptation Domain. Green-armored Stellar Lord didn't seem as ferocious as Star-Lord Greed and Stellar Lord Giant Gate. When the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors flew over, he didn't seem to react at all. Crack! Green-armored Stellar Lord was sliced into 2 by the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors. Joan would imagine that he could successfully pass the test and head to the Star Palace below to take a look, but he heard another crack. The Golden Flood Dragon Scissors had snapped. How can this be? Joan was alarmed. The Golden Flood Dragon Scissors were one of the toughest at the Hell stage. Even a Heaven stage creature would find it difficult to slice through the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors. Furthermore, Joan didn't discover anything pouncing at the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors. It looked like the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors had snapped by itself. Thankfully, they were in-game. Otherwise, it would be a huge loss if the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors snapped. As for the green armor Star Venerate, when the Golden Flood Dragon Scissors broke, his body strangely recovered. It was as if he had never been injured. Joan's heart palpitated as he got Ancient Snake to charge over. Ancient Snake's Temptation Domain didn't seem to have any effect on green-armored Stellar Lord. He stood there unaffected. Ancient Snake bit down and swallowed green-armored Stellar Lord. Green-armored Stellar Lord's tiny body wasn't even enough to fill the gaps between Ancient Snake's teeth. Before Joan could rejoice, the Ancient Snake's massive body suddenly shrank. It was unknown how the green-armored Star-Lord had appeared out of thin air from the Ancient Snake's body. Instead, he opened his mouth and swallowed the Ancient Snake that had turned into a tiny snake. What's going on? What's going on with this fellow? Joan was dumbfounded. Chapter 1549. Green Armored Star Lord stood there without any intention of taking the initiative to attack. He stared coldly at the blood-colored avatar, as though he was saying, "Didn't you want to kill me? Come on." Zhou summoned Bamboo Blade and slashed at Green Armored Star Lord. Green Armor Star Lord really didn't dodge. He stood there and allowed Zhou to slash at him. The bamboo blade in Zhou hand was as fast as lightning as he slashed at Green Armor Star Lord again and again. With the bamboo blade's destructive power and Zhou's strength, he was already equivalent to a calamity-grade strength. After more than 100 slashes, he only managed to leave some marks on the armor. He was unable to truly hurt the Green Armor Star Sovereign. One wound after another appeared on Zhou's body. The spots where his body was injured were the spots where Bamboo Blade had left marks on Green Armor Star-Lord's body. Bang! Just as Zhou's saber stopped, Green Armor Star-Lord punched the blood-colored avatar, killing it. The game screen turned black. This time, Zhou didn't immediately re-enter the game. Instead, he closed his eyes and recalled the battle. Green Armor Star-Lord's power looks like a rebound, but it's definitely not as simple as that. No matter how strong the rebound is, it's impossible for him to transfer his injuries to someone else like this. The more Zhou thought about it, the more excited he became. He liked this kind of novel instance dungeon. It was really boring to always run the same instance dungeon. After pondering for a long time, he still couldn't figure out this problem, so he could only continue grinding dungeons. Xiao Chun tried many more times, but the result was the same. No matter what kind of attack landed on the Green Armor Star Venerate, the injury would return to him. This was simply unbelievable. Xiao Chun had thought of all sorts of methods. Unless he could only defend and not attack, he would be done for if he managed to injure the Green Armor Star Venerate. It was useless to blindly send himself to death again and again. Zhou decided not to grind the Big Dipper dungeon. Instead, he grinded other dungeons, hoping to have a different mindset. However, even if he couldn't kill Green Armor Star Lord, Zhou now had enough of a chance to return home. He was probably the only person on Earth who could kill 2 Star Lords in a row. "Master, your roast meat." When it was mealtime, Lim brought the roast meat over. "Eat it." Zhou was already sick of eating barbecued meat every meal recently. He really couldn't bring himself to eat it. "I don't think it's a good idea." "It's a gift for you, Master," Lim said. "I told you to eat it. Do you dare to say that you didn't?" "Eat in peace," Zhou said indifferently. "Thank you, Master." Although Lim said that, she didn't eat the roasted meat. She continued looking at Zhou eagerly. Seeing Lim's expression, Zhou immediately understood what she was up to. He took out some seasoning and gave it to her. "Sprinkle it yourself." "Thank you, Master." Lim was so excited that she almost couldn't speak. The humans here are still easily satisfied. When they come into contact with the bustling earth, I'm afraid they won't have such pure happiness, Zhou thought. Liam took the seasoning and ran to find Liz. The two of them sprinkled seasoning on the barbecue and ate until their mouths were greasy. It's at the epic stage after all. There's no need to eat to this extent, right? Zhou shook his head with a bitter smile. Suddenly, Zhou realized something and looked at Liz and Lim again. Something's not right. Liz and Lim are at the epic stage. To be able to reach the epic stage at their age, they're considered impressive geniuses on Earth. But how did they advance to the epic stage? This was because the humans in Regretless City were just too weak. They were so weak that Zhou hadn't thought much about their problems. However, on careful thought, most of the humans in the city were at the legendary stage. There were quite a few at the epic stage, but how did they advance? A place like Regretless City didn't have any low-level creatures. The weakest creature outside was at the mythical stage, and there wasn't a single mythical creature in Regretless City. How could they hunt the wrong ones? Zhou called Liz over and asked, "Liz, let me ask you something. You need to answer me truthfully." "Master, just give me the instructions," Liz hurriedly said. "How did the humans in your city advance from the mortal stage? What tools do they usually like to use?" "What does advancement mean?" Liz asked in puzzlement. "Do you know about life providences and life souls?" Zhou asked after some thought. "I know. Isn't that something that's present at birth?" "There's no need to advance," Liz answered. Present at birth? Are you sure? This time, Joan was truly excited. It was simply unimaginable that there were humans who were born at the legendary stage and epic stage. Of course I'm sure. The people in our city all have life providences after they're born. Some of the stronger children even have life souls when they're born, Liz said after some thought. How do these fellows do it? From the looks of it, I have to investigate carefully. Joan decided to figure out why the people in Regretless City received such treatment. Liz, what's your life providence and life soul? Joan asked Liz first. Liz and Lim walked over. When they heard Joan ask them, they explained their life providences and life soul abilities in detail. The more Joan heard, the more alarmed he became. Their life providences and life souls were very special, better than many earthlings. Call the city lord over. Seeing that Liz and Lim couldn't explain it clearly, Joan planned on getting someone useful over. Perhaps he could explain it clearly. Joan learned some useful information from the city lord. It was said that the humans in Regretless City were indeed very weak in the past, but with the passage of time, they were slowly becoming stronger. In the past, the babies born were very normal. They were all at the mortal stage, but with generations of reproduction in Regretless City, babies were now born with the superpowers of the legendary stage, or even terrifying existences at the epic stage. As for the exact reason, the city lord wasn't sure. There were a few guesses in the past, but there was no way to verify them, the city lord said after some thought. Tell me about it. Joan was very interested in such matters. Legends are roughly divided into 3 types. The first is that because we often eat those grass roots, it improves our physique, allowing us to become better and better. What's the second? Joan felt that this explanation wasn't reliable. He had recently tasted the things they ate, and there was nothing special about them. They weren't even considered ordinary dimensional plants. At most, they were mutated plants. The second explanation is related to a treasure in Regretless City. Legend has it that there's a treasure buried in Regretless City. It was brought out from the Garden of Eden by 2 ancestors, the city lord said after some hesitation. Chapter 1550. A treasure brought out of the Garden of Eden? Joan frowned in thought. Legend has it that Adam and Eve were chased out of the Garden of Eden for secretly eating the forbidden fruit. What could they have brought out of the Garden of Eden? The forbidden fruit? This was the only thing Joan could think of. However, there were definitely many good things in the Garden of Eden. If they had taken something else in passing, it was impossible for Joan to guess. This regretless city looks very ordinary, but there's something sinister about it. Adam and Eve's tomb is filled with 2 puppets, and it's said that there's a treasure buried under the city that allows humans to be born with a life providence and life soul. This place is really a little odd, Joan thought to himself. The city lord stole a glance at Joan and said timidly, "There's a third guess. It's said that this place has received your magic powers protection, which is why we have everything we have now. I believe that this is the truth. Everything we have was given to us by you, your majesty." Okay, go busy yourself. After Joan sent the city lord away, he thought about what the city lord had just said. The possibility of the third possibility wasn't high. The first possibility was even more ridiculous. Joan had eaten the root of the stone grass before. It was just the root of an ordinary plant. Even if it had any effects, it could at most be used as a herb. It was impossible for it to allow humans to evolve to such an extent. After some thought, the second possibility was the most likely. However, Joan was really interested in knowing what kind of treasure was beneath Regretless City. What kind of treasure could raise the starting point of humans to such a high level? How can I find it? Joan planned on trying to find it. Truth Listener's ability was very powerful. It could even penetrate the thick mountain and hear the structure of the cave inside the mountain. However, beneath Regretless City was a real mountain. He didn't discover any caves. Since the item isn't in the mountain, the greatest possibility is that it's in Regretless City. Joan used Truth Listener to constantly scan, but he didn't ignore any details, hoping to find any clues. The architecture of Regretless City was very interesting. There were all sorts of statues, carvings, and wall carvings. Zhou repeatedly scanned it, but he didn't discover any power that could allow humans to evolve. Could it be that the treasures of Regretless City are related to those two puppets? After some thought, Zhou realized that the most mysterious thing in Regretless City was likely the two puppets. If it was really because of the two puppets, Zhou really didn't dare dig them up. He had learned from Grim Demon's mistake. Who knew what strange things would happen if he took the two puppets out? However, Zhou wasn't willing to give up just like that. Now, Zhou wanted to establish a city in Guide City. If he really had such a treasure and buried it in his city, the benefits he would receive would be unimaginable. Ignoring the enhancement to newborns, just the advertising effect would bring Zhou huge benefits. Which parent wouldn't want their offspring to win at the starting line? Who wouldn't want their children to be a cut above others? The stronger one was, the stronger they would want their descendants to be. When they knew that the children born in Zhou City were born at the legendary or even epic stage, how many people would come to Zhou City to have children? Just this alone allowed Zhou to recruit a large number of human experts. Even if these human experts weren't willing to join Zhou City, they could take the opportunity to earn large amounts of benefits. They could even be used to exchange for resources that couldn't be obtained with money. In short, with this treasure, it was impossible for Zhou not to develop it. The crux was how to find this treasure. Also, he had to find a safe place to build the city so that others couldn't enter casually. Let's take a look first. If there's no treasure, it's useless thinking about it. Zhou pondered for a moment and took out a tiny beast from the chaos space. The tiny beast looked like a mink, a rat, but not a rat. It also had a squirrel-like tail. It looked very strange. This tiny beast's origins weren't simple. Back then, Tai Sui was bitten out of an iron walnut by this tiny beast. Furthermore, it could replicate an artifact like the orchid blade. The orchid blade, replicated, had the same materials and effects. It was extremely magical. After Zhou obtained this tiny beast, he had been raising it in the chaos space. Later, he had done a lot of research, but he couldn't figure out its origins. However, Zhou knew very well the tiny beast's abilities. It had a rare earth escape technique and was good at finding treasures. Now, Zhou had no other choice but to take it out and give it a try. After all, he had raised it for so many years. This tiny beast was much less wild than before. It was considered close to Zhou, but it was a little too smart. Zhou didn't have much confidence in its loyalty. The moment the tiny beast came out, it looked around furtively. Perhaps it had been too long since it came out, so it was a little uncomfortable and appeared a little reserved. However, after it had taken a good look at its surroundings, it began to gradually reveal its true nature, its furtive eyes looking everywhere. There's a treasure in this city. If you can find it, we'll split the treasure equally. In addition, I'll give you a mythical companion egg as a reward. Zhou promised the tiny beast some benefits first. The tiny beast wasn't his companion beast, nor was it as loyal as the chick. It was difficult to move it if he didn't offer some benefits. When the tiny beast heard Zhou's words, it stood up like a human and gestured at Zhou with its two tiny claws. Its actions were very simple. It extended its claws and flipped them back and forth several times. You want 20? Aren't you being a little too greedy? At most 2, Zhou said. However, the tiny beast was very persistent. It waved its claws and gestured another 20, refusing to give in at all. 3, 4, 5, 10. Zhou kept increasing the price, but the tiny beast was very willful. It didn't go any lower. It meant it when it said 20. All right, 20 it is. However, the thing you find has to be the one I want. You can't just randomly find something to fool me, Zhou said. The little critter nodded, then looked around for a while, sniffed the air with its nose, and ran in a certain direction. Zhou hurriedly followed the tiny beast and watched it sniff left and right. It looked like a police dog. After leaving the cemetery, the people on the street immediately worshipped Zhou piously when they saw him. Wherever Zhou went, there would be people kneeling on the ground. It made him very uncomfortable. The tiny beast didn't care as it circled around the city. After a while, it headed for the cliff. Chapter 1551. Joan had come from the cliff. Opposite the cliff was the lost paradise. He had previously observed the cliff and didn't discover anything amiss. However, the beast firmly ran towards the edge of the cliff, leaving Joan somewhat puzzled. Could it be that the treasure is below the cliff? Soon, Joan dismissed this thought because the little beast had stopped at the edge of the cliff and was sniffing at a rock. Could it be that there's something wrong with that rock? Joan's mind locked onto the rock, but he didn't discover any problems. It was as though it was just an ordinary mountain rock, no different from the rocks beside it. From the looks of it, this little thing of yours isn't very reliable, Grim Demon said. Before Joan could answer, the little beast seemed to understand him. It bared its teeth at Grim Demon as though it was cursing him. You can see me? Grim Demon was slightly taken aback. He was in his terror form and hadn't reached the terror grade, so it was impossible for him to see him. This beast's body level was clearly very low. It was impossible for it to reach the terror grade. Grim Demon naturally found it unbelievable that it could see Grim Demon. The beast continued shouting at him, clearly able to see him. Joan wasn't in the mood to care about them. He walked to the rock and carefully sized it up. It was likely an ordinary mountain rock, but there was something strange about it. On the edge of the cliff was a platform. The rest was flat, and only this rock protruded a foot high. It was very smooth from friction. You come here, Joan called a person kneeling not far away over and asked, why is there a protruding rock here? The person thought for a moment and answered, Your Excellency, this rock has been here for a long time. I don't know when it was here because it's on the edge of the cliff. We usually tie a rope to this rock and use the rope to go down the cliff to find some edible plants and fungi. Get your city lord here, Joan instructed when he saw that he didn't know much. Not long after, the elder jogged over. After meeting him, he knelt down again. All right, stop bowing. Tell me, when was this rock here? Joan waved his hand to stop the elder from kneeling. He was already used to these etiquettes, and it was a waste of time. Only then did the old man stand properly and say, Reporting to your majesty, Demon King, I have only heard from the older generation that there was originally a monument erected here. This monument was here before the establishment of No Regrets City. Because they didn't know who set it up here, the older generation didn't dare to tear it down. After a long time, there was nothing special about this monument, so the older generation used this monument as a pillar, tied it with a rope, and went down to the bottom of the valley in search of food. The old man paused and continued. After a long time, the wind and rain, coupled with a few accidental injuries, the stone tablet broke. After that, we avoided some other difficulties. When it came to our generation, this was all that was left of the stone tablet. As for its origin, we are not too sure. Stone tablet? Joan frowned as he looked at the foot-tall protrusion. It was difficult to associate it with a monument. Moreover, this tablet could actually shatter. If it was really such a magical thing, how could it shatter so easily? The people of No Regrets City didn't know much about this stone, so Joan waved his hand and sent them away. The little beast ran in front of Joan and gestured with its claws. From the looks of it, it was asking Joan for its companion egg. This fellow was like a weasel, but it didn't like to eat eggs but companion eggs. The higher its level, the more it liked to eat them. Joan had previously fed it quite a number of companion eggs. Although their levels weren't high, and most of them were at the epic stage, he had never seen them evolve over the years. Are you sure this stone is a treasure? Joan asked the little beast. The little beast pointed at the stone with its claws and made a digging motion. Joan immediately understood that the treasure wasn't this stone, but underneath it. Joan summoned Tyrant Behemoth and got it to dig open the stone. This kind of hard work was most suitable for it. Tyrant Behemoth didn't transform into its gigantic form. It shrank to a height of 4 to 5 meters. It extended its claws, and with a swipe, the stone was sliced open like tofu. With just a few movements of its claws, the protruding stone was dug out, forming a pit more than a meter deep on the cliff. Clang! Tyrant Behemoth's claws seemed to have touched something as it produced the sound of metal clashing. Joan hurriedly walked over and looked into the pit. He realized that a green metal object was revealed. It looked like bronze. He summoned the bamboo blade and dug up the rock beside the bronze artifact. Soon, the bronze artifact was completely exposed. What's this? Joan sized up the bronze that had been pulled out of the pit, but after looking at it for a while, he couldn't figure out what it was. This item looked very strange. Joan had never seen such bronze before. Ordinary bronze wares, such as cauldrons, furnaces, jades, and the like, not to mention the commonly seen ones. Even some bronze wares whose names were unknown would probably look somewhat similar. However, this bronze item was different from the bronze items Joe had seen in the past. This was the first time Joe had seen a bronze item that looked like a radish. Furthermore, it was a short and fat radish. It was plump and more than a meter tall. The key was that there were 3 leaf-like pieces at the top. No matter how he looked at it, it was a huge radish. What the hell is this thing? Don't tell me it's a radish grown in the Garden of Eden? Joan reached out and knocked on it. It was indeed the sound of metal, but it was hard to tell if it was bronze. There were many mysterious symbols engraved on the bronze item. Unfortunately, Joan didn't know what they meant. Joan increased his strength bit by bit. In the end, he used almost all his strength, but he failed to damage the bronze item that looked like a huge radish. It's really something good. His strength was already comparable to a human creature. Even his strength couldn't damage it. Even if it was only valuable as a material, it was definitely something good. A radish grown in the Garden of Eden is indeed extraordinary. Joan didn't store the bronze item in the chaos space. Instead, he got Grim Demon to guard it. He wanted to see if there was anything wrong with it to prevent him from bringing it back. Is there only this thing here? Are there any other treasures? Joan turned to ask the beast. The beast hesitated for a moment before looking in the direction of the cemetery. Finally, it shook its head as though it was afraid of something. Chapter 1552. Upon seeing the little beast's actions, Joan knew that it had definitely discovered the 2 puppets in the tomb. However, from the looks of it, it was hard to tell if the puppets were a blessing or a curse. Joan walked back, but the little beast didn't leave. It circled around the bronze artifact many times, but it didn't pounce on it. Could it be that there's something inside this carrot-like bronze artifact? Joan guessed inwardly. Back then, the little beast had bitten out Ty's sway from a metal walnut. If this carrot was like a metal walnut, it might be a companion beast inside. That would be interesting. However, the reason why the little beast could eat the metal walnut in the past was because it wasn't too hard. Even the present Joe couldn't injure it at all, much less the little beast. Therefore, although the little beast was very greedy, it didn't want to monopolize the bronze artifact. It was probably because it couldn't chew through it. Joan didn't know if this bronze artifact had anything to do with the people in Regretless City being born at the legendary or epic stage. However, other than this, he couldn't find anything else. He couldn't really demolish Regretless City, right? Even if he really dug 3 feet underground, he might not be able to find any treasures. This was because even if there were treasures, Joan wouldn't recognize them. Something that could emit light wasn't necessarily a treasure. Most of them were electric lights. Something that could ring by itself wasn't necessarily a treasure. It could also be a phone. Finding treasures was a technical task. It was useless to look at appearances. One had to understand what was inside. After returning to the city, before Joan could walk back to the cemetery, he saw the Rubik's Cube in the middle of the street vibrate. The screen lit up and the scene of the Dubby Star Palace appeared. Someone is challenging the Star Palace again? Joan stopped and stood in front of the Rubik's Cube to watch. There were only 2 names on the rankings. One was Saint Nine's Sons, and the other was Fire Armored God. They had only chosen to challenge the Dubby Star Palace. After passing, they didn't head to the next Star Palace. This time, the one that appeared in the Dubby Star Palace was a Triceratops. Its body was silver white as though it was made of platinum. As its body was heavy, the ground seemed to tremble with every step it took. The Triceratops on Earth should be herbivores, right? Joan muttered inwardly. Before he could continue thinking, he saw another dinosaur appear. It was a pterosaur. Its entire body was golden, like a flying golden statue. Following that, two more dinosaurs appeared. One looked like a Tyrannosaurus, while the other looked like a Stegosaurus. The Tyrannosaurus looked like it was made of black iron, while the Stegosaurus looked like it was made of bronze. The appearance of these four dinosaurs immediately attracted the attention of many people. Where did these dinosaurs come from? Didn't they say that dinosaurs were extinct a long time ago? Definitely not a dinosaur from Earth. These four dinosaurs look very strong. Just as everyone was discussing, the Triceratops had already taken the lead and rushed over to the Dubhe Star Palace's gate. The four dinosaurs charged into the Dubhe Star Palace together. When Star Monarch Greed saw them, he immediately punched out. A terrifying explosion of light shone on them. Damn, he actually withstood it. Everyone was alarmed. The four dinosaurs had actually withstood the damage of the explosion of light. Furthermore, they didn't charge towards the teleportation array, but towards Star Monarch Greed. A huge battle immediately broke out in the Star Palace as the four dinosaurs surrounded Star Monarch Greed. Star Monarch Greed wasn't a weakling either. Although the explosion of light couldn't kill the four dinosaurs, his speed and strength weren't bad. Despite fighting four alone, he still fought well and didn't fall into a disadvantageous position. Although the magic cube allowed ordinary people to see high-level creatures that they couldn't see in the past, their eyesight still couldn't keep up with the speed of the battle. In fact, when the battle really began, ordinary people could only see the flashing light. They couldn't see the exact scene of the battle. Joan watched with relish. The four dinosaurs were clearly at the mortal stage, one level lower than Star-Lord Covetous Wolf. However, their abilities were very special. By using four different calamity domains and the various skills they were good at, they were able to surpass their superiors. They were able to fight the Hell Stage Star-Lord Covetous Wolf without being at a disadvantage. They even vaguely held an advantage. If they continued fighting, they might really have a chance of defeating Star Monarch Greed. Furthermore, the four dinosaurs were definitely extremely intelligent. From their teamwork, it was obvious that these fellows might even be smarter than most humans. The pterosaur's attack was as fast as lightning, but Joan was more concerned about its calamity domain. It seemed to be a wind elemental domain. In its domain, the four dinosaurs' speed increased, allowing them to match the Hell Stage Star Monarch Greed. The Triceratops' calamity domain was also very strange. After watching for a while, Joan could only tell that it was a force similar to a gravity domain. It greatly restricted Star Monarch Greed, making it difficult for him to unleash his advantage. The Tyrannosaurus Calamity domain increased the four dinosaurs' attack power. The Stegosaurus Calamity domain was a recovery-type calamity domain. Once the four dinosaurs were injured, they would quickly heal under the influence of the Stegosaurus Calamity domain. The four dinosaurs were able to withstand the explosion of light thanks to the Stegosaurus Calamity domain. With the four-man stage dinosaurs working together, they managed to restrain the Hell Stage Star Monarch Greed. This was also the first time Joan had seen Star Monarch Greed fight. As he had been in the middle of the battle, he couldn't see anything. He didn't know how Star Monarch Greed and the Golden WYRM Scissors fought. He only knew that the Golden WYRM Scissors had sliced off Star Monarch Greed's head. Now that he was watching Star Monarch Greed fight, he realized that this fellow was a freak. He was very powerful in all aspects. His entire body was a combat weapon, and even his but could kill. A casual move from Star Monarch Greed was an ultimate move that ordinary people could spend their entire lives studying and practicing. Even Joan was greatly inspired by this. Star Monarch Greed was like a martial arts question bank. In a one-on-one battle, unless it's an unstoppable fellow like the Golden WYRM Scissors, it's quite difficult to defeat Star Monarch Greed. Zhou had to admit that Star Monarch greed was too strong in combat. Its only flaw was that it was easily restricted by external forces. For example, the Triceratops' gravity domain greatly restricted him, making it difficult for him to unleash his full strength. What a pity. Even someone as strong as Lu Bu can't defeat the three elites. No matter how strong an individual is, they ultimately can't defeat a team. For some reason, Zhou hoped that Star Monarch greed would win. Unfortunately, a miracle didn't happen. With the four dinosaurs working together, they fought for more than 30 hours before the Triceratops' horn pierced through Star Monarch greed's chest. Chapter 1553. Greed's corpse was quickly torn apart by the four dinosaurs, dropping a purple dimensional crystal that was swallowed by the Tyrannosaurus. It didn't have the time to see what crystal it was. After the four dinosaurs killed Greed, they roared at the sky before rushing into the teleportation array and vanishing. They didn't choose to enter the next Star Palace. Instead, they left the Star Palace and the Magic Cube screen returned to the Magic Cube rankings. The first place, originally occupied by Saint Nine's sons, was now occupied by the Dinosaur Four Kings. Saint Nine's sons and Fire Armor God were ranked second and third, respectively. These fellows are really dinosaurs. Don't tell me they're really dinosaurs that walked out of Earth? Now that you mention it, it's really possible. Back then, the extinction of dinosaurs on Earth was a mystery. Perhaps dinosaurs weren't extinct at all. They just evolved to a certain extent and rushed out of Earth to enter the cosmic era. If that's the case, how many dinosaurs are there in the universe? Don't you find it strange? Previously, in the Venus dimensional zone, every person who cleared the level obtained a metal companion egg, but these people didn't seem to obtain anything. Someone discovered the crux of the problem. However, this comment was quickly drowned out by the news of dinosaurs. The various large clans also saw new hope from these dinosaurs. Through the cooperation of various domains, they could actually kill Star-Lord Covetous Wolf. This was clearly a shortcut. Zhou was also very interested in the cooperation of such domains. He was a possessor of multiple domains, so he had been studying how to maximize the effects of his various abilities. However, because the essence energy arts he cultivated had their own characteristics, although it wasn't to say that they couldn't work together, the compatibility wasn't that high. Typically, he would use a few abilities, such as the God-Fiend era and the Sky-Stealing, Sun-Shifting art. However, once he had the Calamity domain, things might turn for the better. The stacking of various domains might have unexpected benefits. Apart from the Chaos Eggs Calamity domain, which isn't convenient to stack, the other domains should be able to be stacked. I have to think of a way to create those dimensional zones as soon as possible. Perhaps when the domains are stacked, I can kill Greed as a Terrorgrade. Zhou thought to himself how he could create domains for the other essence energy arts. The First Order of Chaos and the Ancient Sovereign Sutra have already condensed a domain. Among the remaining essence energy arts, the ones that are easier to match with dimensional zones should be the Tao Sutra and the Demon God Bloodline Catalog. The Tao Sutra came from Mount Laojun, and the Demon God Bloodline Catalog came from Chess Mountain. They had clear origins, so the opportunity for them to advance to the Calamity domain was probably in these two places. Unfortunately, the dimensional creatures in these two places are too powerful. I still haven't been able to clear them. It will probably be very difficult to find the key to condensing a domain. Zhou had no choice but to temporarily give up on the two essence energy arts. Of the remaining essence energy arts, the sky-stealing, sun-shifting art came from the endless sea of stars, but Zhou didn't find any key items despite grinding the endless sea of stars many times. Most importantly, the endless sea of stars was just too big. It was unknown how long it would take to travel through it. Searching for something inside was no different from searching for a needle in a haystack. The difficulty was in no way inferior to Chess Mountain and Mount Laojun. The God-Fiend era and the Chi Refinement art temporarily didn't have a corresponding dimensional zone. Zhou had also gone to small Buddha temple, which corresponded to the small perfection of Wisdom Sutra, many times, but he similarly failed to find the key item to advance to the calamity domain. After some thought, Zhou felt that he could continue searching for small Buddha temple. After all, that place was relatively small. If there was really an item that could advance to the calamity level, the chances of finding it were higher. Also, he could give the Qi refinement art a try. It probably wouldn't be easy to find a dimensional zone corresponding to the God Fiend era, but Zhou already had a goal for the Qi refinement art. Although the Qi refinement art focused on Qi refinement, everyone's cultivation direction was different. This meant that the same Qi refinement art would be very different. For example, the life soul condensed by Zhou when Qi refinement art was a sword, while Hui Wan condensed a smartphone. They were two completely different things, and their styles would only become more and more different in the future. With his current insights, Zhou felt that his Qi refinement art was actually quite suitable for the Ancient Sword Tomb. He wanted to head to the Ancient Sword Tomb to see if he could condense a domain for the Qi refinement art. Furthermore, Zhou actually had a goal in mind. It wasn't without purpose. In the Ancient Sword Tomb, there was a sword that Zhou had never been able to pull out. Furthermore, every time Zhou pulled out the sword, the entire Ancient Sword Tomb would tremble as though all the swords were about to fly out. It was a grayish-black vine sword that was stabbed into a small mound. Previously, when Zhou's level was low, he couldn't pull it out. Later, when he reached the Terrorgrade, he still couldn't pull it out. After that, he didn't try again. If it wasn't for the Qi refinement sword, Zhou wouldn't have thought of pulling out the sword. Now, Zhou suspected that the vine sword was very likely the core of the Ancient Sword Tomb, the key to advancing to the Calamity Grade. Of course, this was only Zhou's guess. Even if the vine sword was really the core of the Ancient Sword Tomb, it was a problem if it could match Zhou's Qi refinement art. Furthermore, Zhou wasn't sure if it was an item that had advanced to the Calamity Grade. Perhaps it was because it was too powerful that he couldn't pull it out. Zhou arrived at the Ancient Sword Tomb again. It had been a while since he had grinded the Ancient Sword Tomb, so he found it somewhat unfamiliar. Thankfully, Zhou's memory wasn't bad. He quickly found the tiny tomb. The vine sword stabbed into it was still the same. It looked like a withered vine had stabbed into it. I hope it works. Otherwise, I really don't know where to find a dimensional zone that matches the Qi refinement art. Although Zhou also wanted to head to the Founding Emperor tomb, there wasn't anything that matched the Qi refinement art, nor was there anything that matched the Qi refinement art that Zhou cultivated. He felt that the chances were slim. Walking in front of the vine sword, Zhou circulated the Qi refinement art. Immediately, sword Qi seeped out from his body. The sword pill, condensed from essence energy, also emitted sword intent in his consciousness space. With a thought from Zhou, the sword pill immediately transformed into an appearance that was very similar to the immortal culling sword. The sword intent on the sword became even sharper and more ferocious. With a terrifying sword aura and sword intent, Zhou reached out to grab the hilt of the vine sword. After grabbing the hilt, he suddenly exerted force, hoping to pull the vine sword out of the tiny tomb. The vine sword was originally grayish-black and withered, looking like a dead vine. Now that Zhou had pulled it out, the vine sword emitted a strange sword intent like a blooming flower. Chapter 1554. The vine sword was pulled out inch by Zhou, and the sword intent on the vine sword became stronger. It began to spray out like fireworks, and in the end, it was like a volcanic eruption that nearly tore through the sky. Zhou practiced the sword himself and was proficient in the 3,000 sword intents, but he had never seen such a sword intent from the vine sword. Instead of calling it a sword intent, it was better to say that it was a concept of life. Rumble. The entire Ancient Sword Tomb was shaking as countless swords vibrated above the tomb, as though they were about to fly out at any moment and charge at Zhou. Zhou was pleasantly surprised as he looked at the Ancient Sword Tomb that was shaking and the thousands of sword auras surging into the sky. He was delighted that the Vine Sword was very likely to be the core of the ancient sword tomb. Perhaps the Chi refinement art had a chance of advancing to the calamity level. However, looking at the situation in the ancient sword tomb, if all the swords really broke out of the tomb and attacked Zhou, he might not be able to handle the countless swords as he pulled out the sword. Ba, please bless me to pull out the Vine Sword safely. Before I advance to the calamity level, those swords mustn't come out, Zhou prayed inwardly. However, what he was afraid of happened. The Vine Sword had only been pulled out halfway when Zhou suddenly heard a clear and dull sword hum. It was like the hum of thousands of swords being unsheathed on a battlefield. Oh no! Zhou cursed inwardly as he glanced over. Indeed, he saw that the swords in the tomb had already flown out and were suspended in the sky like a galaxy. At a glance, the sky was filled with resplendent sword flashes. He couldn't see the end, nor did he know how many swords there were. Just as Zhou took a glance, he saw all the swords in the sky pointing their tips at him. All the swords were aimed at Zhou from all directions. At that instant, Zhou suddenly felt like he was surrounded by enemies. The feeling of being alone and helpless left him trembling in fear. Without any interval, all the swords erupted with all sorts of sword auras, sword flashes, and sword intents. The sword flashes that filled the sky intertwined and came crashing down. At this point, Zhou couldn't give up. He could only continue pulling out the sword as he prepared to defend against the bombardment of the swords. Open! Zhou activated the first order of Chaos Domain as shimmering words appeared, enveloping his body and forming the shape of a Chaos Egg. Inside the Chaos Egg, Zhou held the sword hilt with both hands and pulled it up with all his might. Outside, countless swords struck the Chaos Egg like a storm. Bang! Bang! It was better to die in glory than to live in dishonor. The swords seemed to have the determination to perish together. They used all their strength to strike the Chaos Egg, not leaving themselves a way out. When the low-grade swords collided with the Chaos Egg, they shattered. When the high-grade swords collided with the Chaos Egg, they desperately drilled until their bodies could not withstand the immense pressure and broke. Waves of sword rain bombarded the Chaos Egg crazily as a large amount of solid essence energy condensed in the Chaos Egg. If it were the Chaos Egg before it advanced to the Calamity grade in the past, it would have exploded long ago. Thankfully, after advancing to the Calamity grade, the primordial energy crystals in it could be stacked, so there was no need to worry about it exploding. Just a third more, and it will be pulled out. Looks like it should be able to hold on. As Zhou pulled, he thought to himself, although the attacks of the swords outside were intense, it wasn't enough to break through the Chaos Egg's defense. Just as he was thinking, he suddenly heard a tearing sound. He saw a sword pierce through the Chaos Egg's outer shell before a portion of the sword tip stabbed into Zhou's chest. If not for most of the force being blocked by the Chaos Egg, Zhou's chest would have been penetrated. Even though the Chaos Egg had blocked most of the blade's power, a terrifying sword aura still rushed out from the blade and wreaked havoc in Zhou's body. The sword aura was extremely terrifying. Apart from the immortal culling sword, Zhou had never seen such a brutal sword aura. The moment the sword aura entered his body, it immediately spread like a virus to all the cells in his body, hoping to destroy all the cells in his body. Not even ashes were left. Zhou hurriedly circulated the Chi refinement art and condensed sword aura to resist the terrifying destructive sword aura. At the same level, Zhou's sword aura was considered an extremely condensed sword aura. As it was formed from the constant accumulation and compression of essence energy, it was very difficult for ordinary sword auras to resist Zhou's sword aura. However, when it collided with the destructive sword aura, Zhou's sword aura appeared somewhat lacking. It was like the difference between well-tempered steel and ordinary pig iron. Zhou's sword aura retreated bit by bit as his cells were constantly being destroyed. After the sword aura collapsed, his body couldn't withstand such a terrifying sword aura. This is still under the situation where the Chaos Egg has blocked most of the force. There's actually such a terrifying sword in the ancient sword tomb. Zhou was alarmed. Thankfully, he was in-game. If it were in reality, he would have long abandoned the sword and fled. He wouldn't have bothered drawing it. However, in-game, Zhou was still willing to take the risk. He gathered all his strength and pulled out the sword, hoping to pull out the vine sword before he was destroyed. There was only a small section of the vine sword left in the tomb. The blood-colored avatar's chest collapsed at a discernible speed. Outside the chaos egg, the millions of swords were still attacking crazily. Although Zhou knew that he wouldn't be able to escape death even if he pulled out the vine sword, he still wanted to see if he would have an opportunity to advance to the calamity grade after pulling it out. Will I die first, or will the vine sword be pulled out first? Zhou could sense that the flesh on the blood-colored avatar's chest had almost completely collapsed. Thankfully, his physique was strong enough. If it were any ordinary person, they would have long died. Even Zhou's body was almost at its limit. The game screen could turn black at any moment. Just as Zhou thought he was about to die, he finally pulled out the vine sword. As he had used too much strength, he raised it above his head after pulling it out. The extremely powerful sword intent on the vine sword exploded like a nuclear bomb at this moment. Wherever the sword intent passed, the millions of swords that were bombarding Zhou seemed to lose their souls as they fell from the sky like snowflakes. Even the sword that had stabbed into Zhou's chest slowly retreated in an abnormally strange manner. The sword aura that could destroy almost everything retreated like a tide as the blade was pulled out of Zhou's chest and left the chaos egg. In the next second, the sword intent emitted by the vine sword surged towards the sword pill that Zhou had condensed. Chapter 1555. The present sword pill already had 3,000 sword intents. When the vine sword's sword intent surged in, it forcefully shattered all 3,000 sword intents. The sword pill that had already transformed into the immortal culling sword gradually returned to its sword pill state. Zhou felt as though the sword pill had become a huge furnace. The 3,000 sword intents seemed to melt inside the sword pill as they gradually fused into one. And what fused the 3,000 sword intents into one was the sword intent on the vine sword. From beginning to end, Zhou didn't sense the vine sword emit any sword aura, but its sword intent was so powerful that it was unimaginable to Zhou. Zhou had never seen a sword intent that was so powerful. Even without sword aura, just the sword intent alone was probably enough to affect one's heart. As the sword intents constantly fused, Zhou sensed that the sword pill was beginning to evolve and condense a domain. However, the condensation of this domain was rather strange. It was actually a pure sword intent domain, without the participation of sword chi. A pure sword intent domain? Is this really alright? Zhou wore an odd expression, unsure if it suited him. The chi refinement art was clearly an essence energy art that focused purely on cultivating essence energy, but the calamity domain condensed was a pure sword intent domain. No matter how Zhou thought about it, the chi refinement art wasn't compatible with such a domain. As the sword intent in the vine sword fused into the sword pill, the vine sword began to crumble, turning into dust that scattered. The tens of thousands of swords in the ancient sword tomb all fell to the ground, as if they were subjects worshipping their king. Only a few swords returned to the ancient sword tomb and did not tremble like the other swords. Among them was the sword that had pierced through the chaos egg and nearly killed Zhou. Zhou didn't see any of this. He was wondering if such a domain was what he needed. It wasn't that a pure sword intent domain wasn't good. As long as a domain existed, it had to have a reason for its existence. What Zhou was considering was if this domain was suitable for him and the chi refinement art. The domain was slowly taking shape. Zhou could already sense how powerful it was. Just the domain that had yet to take shape was enough to make thousands of swords submit. Most of the swords in the sword intent domain lost their functions. If someone were to fight Zhou with a sword, The enemy's sword would suddenly lose its functions in the sword intent domain. It would be too easy for Zhou Wen to defeat his opponent. Such a domain was very powerful, but Zhou Wen felt that it wasn't the domain he needed. Perhaps others would find it satisfying to make their opponents unable to unleash their full strength before crushing them. But Zhou Wen didn't like it. Even if he had to defeat his opponent, Zhou Wen wished to defeat an opponent in peak condition, not one who had been deprived of the ability to resist. That would only make Zhou Wen feel bored. This isn't the domain I want. Zhou Wen finally understood what he really wanted. But how could he reverse the formation of the domain? Zhou Wen didn't know. He had never had such an experience, nor did he know if he could change the domain that was taking shape. If this were in reality, Zhou Wen would only wait for the domain to be completed. He wouldn't dare do anything at such a time because it was equivalent to courting death. However, in the game, no matter how much he messed around, the worst that could happen was that he would die. He could always revive with a drop of blood. At most, I'll fail to condense my domain. I'd rather fail than condense a domain that I don't like. Zhou Wen made up his mind as his strength erupted crazily. He forcefully interrupted the transmission of the sword intent and wanted to throw the remaining half of the vine sword out. However, Zhou Wen's desperate attempt failed to throw the remaining half of the vine sword out. Instead, his sword intent clashed with the sword intent of the broken sword. Sword Pill, which was already on the right track and was fusing with the domain, instantly distorted. The sword intent domain that had already been produced began to collapse. The thousands of swords that had already submitted to the ground gradually raised their sword tips as though they were attracted by a magnet. The sword tips pointed at Zhou Wen. The domain constantly collapsed as the swords gradually floated up again, turning into an encirclement of Zhou Wen. Once the unformed domain on Zhou Wen completely collapsed, the swords would kill him like before. So what if I die? It's better than having a domain I don't like. It's best if you kill me quickly before the domain condenses successfully. Zhou Wen wanted the domain to collapse faster, but the sword intent in his body was running amok. He couldn't even control his body, so he had no chance of dying even if he wanted to. The vine sword intent was still flowing in, but the sword intent in Sword Pill was flowing out and surging into Zhou Wen's body. The sword intent was originally formed from the 3,000 sword intents, but after being struck by the vine sword intent, the 3,000 sword intents had turned into countless fragments and were about to fuse into one. Under normal circumstances, when the 3,000 sword intents and the vine sword intent completely fused into one, the domain would condense successfully. When that happened, all the sword intents would no longer be separated and would fuse into one. It wouldn't affect Zhou Wen at all. However, after the 3,000 sword intents were shattered, they hadn't completely fused. All sorts of sword intent fragments rushed out, affecting Zhou Wen's mind to a certain extent. It felt like there was a mistake in the editing of a movie. An action movie, a romance movie, a martial arts movie, and a sci-fi movie were cut together. When it was played, it would be this scene for a while, and then suddenly it would switch to a completely unrelated scene. It was a headache for the audience. Thankfully, Zhou Wen's willpower was extremely firm, so he wasn't affected by the illusory sword intent. However, as the vine sword intent surged in, Zhou Wen realized that the sword intent fragments seemed to slowly return to their previous trajectories as though they were about to condense the domain again. No, I can't do this. Zhou Wen attempted to use his psyche to control the sword intent fragments. He didn't have a specific goal and just wanted to cause trouble. It wasn't easy to stop the domain from condensing, but Zhou Wen believed that as long as he could restrain the vine sword intent and prevent the domain from forming, he could wait for the swords to kill him. At that moment, the swords in the ancient sword tomb had already flown up again and were aimed at Zhou Wen. With a hum, thousands of swords shot out and charged at Zhou Wen. They're coming. Zhou Wen was overjoyed. He didn't have a chaos egg around him. If the swords charged at him, they would quickly kill him. It was impossible for the Calamity domain to condense successfully. Seeing that thousands of swords had already rushed in front of Zhou Wen, he closed his eyes and waited for death. His face was filled with a smile, but something unexpected happened. Chapter 1556. There was still half a vine sword left in Zhou Wen's hand. The already terrifying sword intent suddenly became even more terrifying. It was as though a sword Tao of the Arch had descended. The terrifying sword intent pressure caused the thousands of swords in the ancient sword tomb to instantly fall to the ground. Some of the swords couldn't withstand the pressure of the sword intent as they constantly trembled before shattering with a bang. A few swords that weren't affected by the vine sword were also trembling. The sword hums were incessant, as though it was a battle between heaven and man. An ancient sword that was originally unmoved was blasted apart by the explosion. The ancient sword also fell from the explosion and fell to the ground, motionless. It was like a subject that was worshipping it. The other swords also began to tremble. Zhou Wen had the most direct sense of the sword intent. He could clearly sense that it wanted to bring its will into Zhou Wen's primordial energy art and form a calamity domain that was completely compatible with it. The chaotic sword intent in Zhou Wen's body was rapidly restored to order under the strong restraints of the vine sword intent as it began to construct the calamity domain again. Zhou Wen was someone who wouldn't budge. Now that the vine sword was forcefully condensing the calamity domain, Zhou Wen obviously wasn't willing to comply. Since I can't use the power of those swords to commit suicide, I'll kill myself. With a thought, the golden flood dragon scissors immediately flew out and transformed into a golden beam of light that sliced at the blood-colored avatar's head. Clang! The half-broken vine sword actually moved on its own, blocking the golden WIRM scissors. The golden WIRM scissors was a hell-grade weapon that could cut creatures of the same level in half. However, it was blocked by the half-broken vine sword, unable to cut it. The golden flood dragon scissors struck a second time, but the half-broken vine sword was extremely miraculous. It blocked the golden flood dragon scissors' attacks again and again. Even though the golden flood dragon scissors had been sliced into two with all its might, it was blocked by the vine sword. Zhou Wen tried his best to control his hand, but it was useless. Under the vine sword's pull, his hand involuntarily moved with the vine sword, blocking the golden flood dragon scissors again and again. As for the sword intent fragments in Zhou Wen's body, they were gradually absorbed back into sword pill. Even if you are really a sword immortal from heaven, you can't force me to do something I don't like. Seeing that the golden WIRM scissors had failed, Zhou Wen summoned all his pets. If outsiders saw so many high-level companion beasts, they would probably be extremely envious. However, when they saw the companion beasts desperately attacking their owners, they would probably be so shocked that they couldn't close their mouths. Perhaps many people had never seen companion beasts attack their owners in their entire lives. Zhou Wen's various companion beasts, golden WIRM scissors, golden sniper, fiend armored tiger soul general, golden battle god, tyrant behemoth, and so on, were summoned by Zhou Wen as long as they were above the terror grade. He made them attack him with all their might. Dang, dang, dang. However, the vine sword was invincible. It managed to block all the attacks under the attacks of so many companion beasts. It even killed quite a number of companion beasts. The golden sniper's bullet was shattered as the golden battle god was instantly sliced in half. Tyrant Behemoth, who had just advanced to the calamity stage, was sent retreating hundreds of meters by the strike despite using absolute strength and super dominance domain. Damn, what the hell is this rot tan sword? Is it that ferocious? It wasn't that Zhou Wen had never seen ferocious dimensional creatures, but he had never seen one as ferocious as the rot tan sword. The rot tan sword seemed determined to fuse with Zhou Wen's calamity domain. A shocking sword intent surged, forcing the companion beasts to retreat. I really don't believe it. It's not easy to live, but isn't it easy to die? Zhou Wen summoned the ancient splitting spores and made them explode in his body. Dr. Darkness attached himself to Zhou Wen in his soul form, but he didn't help Zhou Wen fight. Instead, he infected Zhou Wen with poison. Unfortunately, their levels were a little low, so they failed to severely injure Zhou Wen's body. Zhou Wen didn't die, but due to the explosion of the ancient splitting spores, Zhou Wen's body trembled severely. The chi refinement art that was circulating caused his essence energy to scatter, causing Sword Pill to lose control. On the other side, the soul-suppressing divine light of the soul revealing mirror shone on the wrought tan sword, causing a black halo to appear on it. It seemed to have played a certain role. However, in the next second, Zhou Wen's body was carried by the wrought tan sword as he appeared in front of the soul revealing mirror, as though he had teleported. With one strike, he shattered the soul revealing mirror. This fellow is a little afraid of the soul revealing mirror? Zhou Wen was slightly taken aback. After fighting for so long, the wrought tan sword only guided Zhou Wen's arm to fight, killing or repelling the approaching companion beasts. However, Zhou Wen hadn't moved previously. Only when the soul-suppressing divine light of the soul revealing mirror descended would the wrought tan sword take the initiative to attack. It was somewhat different from the passive battle from before. The soul revealing mirror has been shattered by it. I don't have a second companion beast of the same type. Even if I know that the wrought tan sword is afraid of the soul revealing mirror's power, I have no means to restrain it. Could it be that I really have to condense a domain just like that? Zhou Wen felt depressed. However, Zhou Wen had no other means to use. His body was being controlled, and his companion beasts couldn't defeat the wrought tan sword. All he could do was condense a domain. Just as Zhou Wen believed that the outcome was set and that there was nothing he could do to reverse the situation, the sword flew over. Strange, why are there still swords flying over at this time? Zhou Wen was somewhat puzzled. As the wrought tan sword's sword intent was too powerful, it suppressed all the swords to the point where they couldn't raise their heads. No swords dared to approach Zhou Wen. However, the sword didn't seem to be suppressed by the wrought tan sword's sword intent as it flew straight at Zhou Wen. With a clang, the sword flew out of the scabbard and stabbed at Zhou Wen's chest. That's the three swords of the Emperor. Zhou Wen was quite alarmed. The sword that flew over was actually the three swords of the Emperor that Zhou Wen had been unable to pull out. Although the three swords of the Emperor were only at the Terror grade, Zhou Wen had yet to pull them out. How could he not be surprised that the three swords of the Emperor had unsheathed themselves? Something's wrong. Previously, when I used it to kill enemies, I couldn't pull it out no matter how hard I tried. Now that I'm using it to kill me, it actually unsheathed itself. What the heck is this? Zhou Wen, who should have been pleasantly surprised, felt even more depressed when he thought of this. The three swords of the Emperor were formed from the fusion of light concealment, shadow support, and night immaculate, but it didn't seem to inherit the three swords' invisibility ability. When it was in the scabbard, it was always visible. Zhou Wen originally imagined that the three swords of the Emperor didn't have any invisibility ability, but when he saw it unsheathed, he realized that he couldn't see the blade of the three swords of the Emperor. He only felt a powerful sword intent condense in front of the hilt like a sharp blade that stabbed at his chest. Chapter 1557. The attack power of the Emperor's three swords wasn't very strong among Zhou Wen's companion beasts. The golden WIRM scissors attack was far stronger than it. Even among Terror-grade companion beasts, there were quite a number that were stronger than it. However, the Vine Sword was the first to meet the Son of Heaven's three swords. The Vine Sword struck the body of the Son of Heaven's three swords and sent them flying. When the three swords of the Emperor flew out, Zhou Wen realized that something was amiss. He saw that the thousands of swords that had been suppressed by the Vine Sword were slowly flying up. However, in the past, those swords all flew on their own without any order, only rushing towards their target. However, things were different now. The swords were clearly centered around the Emperor's three swords. No matter how one looked at it, they seemed to be controlled by the Emperor's three swords. Buzz! The Son of Heaven's three swords rang out as thousands of swords ignored the Vine Sword's sword intent suppression and charged at Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen didn't know if he should laugh or cry. The Emperor's three swords were indeed working hard to carry out his orders, but he had never seen it help him when he fought enemies in the past. Now that Zhou Wen wanted to commit suicide, it was working so hard. This was the first time Zhou Wen knew that the Emperor's three swords could control other swords. What was even more ridiculous was that the ancient sword that had dropped earlier was probably at the calamity grade, even higher than the Emperor's three swords. Logically speaking, it should not have been controlled by the Emperor's three swords. However, at that moment, the ancient sword charged at Zhou Wen with the other swords. There were also a few other swords of similar strength that rushed over as well. Clang, 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 clang. As the vine sword fought the golden WIRM scissors and other companion beasts, it also had to withstand the attacks of thousands of swords. The situation immediately turned terrible. Even someone as powerful as the vine sword couldn't gain the upper hand under such circumstances. Wounds began to appear on Zhou Wen's body. The Son of Heaven's three swords hung there motionlessly, but the swords charged forward without any regard for their own lives. Hurry up, it's too late. Zhou Wen felt that the domain in his body was about to be completed. If he was killed after it was completed, it would be useless. However, the swords had already used all their strength, but they still failed to kill Zhou Wen. All they did was injure some unimportant spots. Buzz! Another sword hum sounded. This time, Zhou Wen heard it clearly. The sword hum came from a huge tomb. Since the start of the battle, basically all the swords had flown out, but unexpectedly, there was still a sword stuck in the grave. Zhou Wen took a careful look and immediately recognized it. The sword on the grave was clearly the one that had nearly killed him. Afterward, the vine sword emitted sword intent pressure, and the sword returned to the grave, never to fly out again. At this moment, the sword was actually trembling nonstop, as if it was about to rush out. Zhou Wen could sense that the vine sword's sword intent was surging towards the sword above the grave. Clearly, it placed great importance on the sword. As for the Son of Heaven's three swords, it was even more direct. It had already flown to the back of the large tomb and hovered next to the ancient sword. However, the sword essence exuded by the Son of Heaven's three swords was not as tyrannical as the vine sword. It did not seem like it was controlling the sword, but more like it was persuading. The sword in the grave did not break out of the grave. It seemed to be hesitating. The Son of Heaven's three swords are only at the Terrorgrade after all. I'm afraid I'll suffer. Zhou Wen felt that things were bad. He was also vying for the sword, and the high-level vine sword was naturally more advantageous. If I had known that the Son of Heaven's three swords was so powerful, I would have thought of a way to raise it to the calamity grade. Perhaps I would still have a chance of fighting the vine sword. As Zhou Wen sized up the sword in the grave, he felt regret. The sword in the grave looked like an ordinary ancient sword. It was 3 feet long and didn't look very beautiful. The patterns on the sword were also very ordinary. No matter how you looked at it, it didn't look like a famous sword. Instead, it looked like a sword used by ancient soldiers. However, after seeing it pierce through the chaos egg, he knew how terrifying its offensive strength was. Compared to the golden flood dragon scissors, it was likely not inferior. Just as Zhou Wen was pondering over it, he heard a sword hum. The sword rushed out of the grave and floated in the air. The instant the sword appeared, all the swords seemed to subconsciously retreat a little. Who was it trying to help? Although Zhou Wen felt that the sword was more likely to help the vine sword, he couldn't help but have some fantasies, hoping that the power of the Son of Heaven's three swords would move it. Of course, Zhou Wen also knew that the possibility of this happening was relatively low, but he had no other choice. All he could do was pray. The sword floated in the air for a while before suddenly transforming into a stream of light that flew towards the Son of Heaven's three swords. It's over. Zhou Wen was alarmed, knowing that he had lost. The sword's destructive power was too terrifying. If it chose to help the vine sword, it was likely that the Son of Heaven's three swords would be sliced apart. However, to his surprise, the sword only circled around the Son of Heaven's three swords before charging at Zhou Wen. The sword's flying speed was unbelievably fast and terrifying. Zhou Wen didn't even see how it stabbed over when the tip of the sword had already touched the flesh on Zhou Wen's chest. The vine sword's reaction wasn't slow either. It blocked the blade and didn't let stab down. A shocking sword strike sounded as Zhou Wen felt his body involuntarily fly backward. The Divine Sword was no match for the sword as it pulled Zhou Wen's body backward. Son of Heaven's Sword, Son of Heaven's Sword, you really are AF ** King, good helper of Killer Lord. Such a powerful sword can actually be used by you. Zhou Wen was pleasantly surprised, but he couldn't tell what he was feeling. However, in general, he was still happy. Now he could see hope. Indeed, just as the Divine Sword flew backward, the ancient sword that had come out of the tomb transformed into a beam of light and pierced through the blood-colored avatar's chest. This time, there was no Chaos Egg to help Zhou Wen block it. Zhou Wen used his flesh and blood to directly sense the ancient sword's might. Zhou Wen's flesh and blood were already comparable to that of a mortal creature, but under the sword's blade, he was no different from tofu. He was directly penetrated. A huge hole appeared in the blood-colored avatar's chest. The ancient sword pierced through just like that. Its sword aura even invaded Zhou Wen's body through the wound. Zhou Wen had already tried the destructive sword aura before, but most of it had been blocked by the Chaos Egg. This time, it charged into Zhou Wen's body without any reservations. Zhou Wen felt like all his cells were about to be destroyed instantly. There was no room for recovery. I'm finally free. Zhou Wen secretly heaved a sigh of relief, but he didn't expect another accident to happen. The half of the Divine Sword suddenly turned to dust. Terrifying sword intent was released and drilled into Zhou Wen's body from all directions. Half of the Divine Sword's sword intent had fused with Sword Pill. After the remaining half entered, Sword Pill immediately glowed brightly. Sword intent spewed out, forcefully preventing the terrifying sword aura from spreading through Zhou Wen's body. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.